I get to make a fun announcement before we start this year's Kentucky Derby Monster Pod. Get to give away some money, and we're going to give away some more money during this show as well. Congratulations to commenter Moo Trail, who wins a $100 free bet on the Kentucky Derby for making a comment on our Kentucky Derby draft episode. And let's offer up the same opportunity here. Go ahead, make a comment on this video. Tell us who you think is going to win this year's Kentucky Derby. Automatically be entered in a random drawing to win a $100 free bet on the race. Help us out too. Rate, review, and subscribe right here on iTunes. And let's get on with the show. Hello and welcome to what is annually one of the most fun shows of the year to record. This year with a new twist, we're doing it on video over on YouTube. Hey, let us know your preferred Derby horse down in the comments. We'd love to hear from you as well. I am your host, Peter Thomas Fornatale from the In the Money Players podcast, and I am joined as ever by my usual co-host on this network. You can see his little icon there behind me on my new little cool acoustic soundboard. He's coming to you from the planet Texas. He's the people's champion. He's Jonathon Kinchen. What's up, JK?
PTF, I last year wasn't very much fun for a ton of reasons. One of them, and very low on the list, was that we didn't get to experience the first Saturday in May. And it's one of my favorite days of the entire year, if not my favorite day outside of like my son's birthday. It's amazing. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm glad that we're going to be back at Churchill. It's not going to be everyone at Churchill, but I think it'll be a nice crowd, a nice feel. And there's nothing better than those 20 horses loading in that gate and running around there for about 2 minutes and seeing who gets to put the rose blanket on. It's a special day. I'm really excited about it.
It's super exciting. Don't kid folks, though. Your favorite day of the year is your own birthday because you can eat as much ice cream as you want.
Oh, no. I mean, I eat as much ice cream as I want every day. Yeah, no, it's definitely Derby Day, Saratoga opening, the second day at Saratoga, the third day at Saratoga. It goes in that order all the way to the Travers.
Fair enough. Let's talk about the Derby from a gambling perspective. You talk about what it means to you as a sporting event. You've attended many, many years. You've also had some of your greatest gambling successes. Why should folks listen to this podcast to hear about all these runners? What kind of score can they maybe turn that into?
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of money in the pool. It's one of the biggest pools you'll see in this country all year and the biggest betting days. So there's lots of opportunity to find horses that are 10-1, 15-1, and find those life-changing scores. Life-changing scores don't happen on every Wednesday or Thursday or Saturday at a place like Keeneland or Saratoga or Belmont. But there's usually a life-changing opportunity come Derby Day, and it usually surrounds this 20-horse field. There's so much meat on the bone in this field, whether you're playing on the exacta, the trifecta, the superfecta, or even finishing multi-race bets there. There's a lot of opportunity, especially if you don't like the favorite. Essential Quality is going to be a heavy favorite in here. Maybe not a heavy favorite, but a favorite, a clear favorite, I think. And I think finding some other horse in here that you might like gives you a great opportunity. So why listen to this? You're going to have one person talking about one horse, breaking it down for them, hopefully not getting all that bias mixed in. If you just listen to me talk, I'm going to talk about Essential Quality, Known Agenda, and Rock Your World. And that's all I'm going to give you, right? But I think other people can give you a little bit more. And I think that's what this Monster Pod does.
We're going to be doing something a little different. We've done it differently every year. We've had you on as sort of a pure guest on the show. We've had you weaving in and out as a co-host, interviewing guests with me. This time, let's do the divide and conquer approach. I think that'll be a little bit more fun and possibly keep us a little bit more sane. But that means that you and I are not going to have a chance to sort of give our final opinions on this. Don't worry. That's what the Kentucky Derby Final Answers show is for. That's going to be coming to you live from Lexington, Kentucky next week, April 28th. We're going to be recording that. We'll live stream it. We'll archive it on YouTube. We'll put it on the podcast network as well. You've already tipped your hands as to the runners you like. As for me, we're going to get to that as we get through talking to guests, and I'm sure you'll have a chance to chime in and give some more opinions throughout the show here as well. Anything else, JK, or should we dive into these interviews?
Yeah, Pete, hang that jacket up when you're done today. So when you're recording some tomorrow, we don't have to look at a wardrobe change. I'm going to keep this one clean for a couple days.
That was actually my strategy, if you can believe it. I recorded the first one yesterday, and unfortunately, this is terrible. She may not end up in the show this year. I recorded 2 interviews with the great Brittany Urton that unfortunately we then subsequently learned in the intervening 24 hours neither horse is going to run. But I realized the costume change thing then because I was just wearing a T-shirt that I would not have wanted to remix. But yeah, the sweatshirt, we can keep it rocking and rolling. So you're going to see me, you're going to see JK, you're going to see this sweatshirt very soon, right after this message. Every year at this time, horse players can be sure of one thing. A friend is going to come at them and ask them, who is going to win this year's Kentucky Derby? Well, I'll tell you what, you can tell them whatever horse you want. But if you want to give them a sure winner, if they don't already have a twinspires.com account, you can get a free $200 if you bet $200. Check out all the details over at twinspires.com or via the TwinSpires app. Just make sure to use the promo code BET200 to access this free $200. It's a rare, sure winner. Next up on the show, a guest I always love having on these airwaves, one of the most popular in the history of the whole network. He's a professional horse player. He's also an author. The book is called Betting with an Edge. The only thing that held it back a little bit was his co-writer, but it still managed to shine through. Very happy to welcome back to the airwaves, Mike Maloney. Mike, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, Pete. And as far as the book would have never happened without you. So I think most of the credit goes there.
Well, you're very kind. Labor of love, to say the least. But I know from the book that you have quite an experience betting on the Kentucky Derby. This is a race where one of the most meaningful, emotionally at least, scores of your life came in this race. And it didn't coming up with a clever 20-1 shot. It came up with coming up with a smart bet, keying around a favorite. And that is one of the reasons why I wanted you. And JK actually was, I think, the first one to say, oh, you should get Mike to talk about Essential Quality. Really curious to hear your thoughts on Essential Quality and how this horse shapes up against, say, a typical Kentucky Derby favorite, if there is such a thing.
Yeah, I think Essential Quality is probably the most likely winner in a weak year for the Derby. He's not a horse that I am cutting in line, as JK would say, to bet in the picks, to single in the picks. He's more of a horse that I think is an excellent vertical wager key. So I trust him to show up, to run his race, to hit the board somewhere. I still think he's the most likely winner in this year's Derby. But I'm much more interested in relying on his consistency and his versatility to put him in the number rather than having, as I did the year that we wrote about in the book with Street Sense, was more of a deal where I really felt that if he ran his race, he would win. And then luckily enough, he did. But I don't feel that way about Essential Quality. I feel if he runs his race, he's probably going to be 1-2. And I'm going to tailor my wagering to try to reflect that opinion.
We'll get to the specifics of what you're thinking about in terms of wagering before we wrap up, but I want to talk about Essential Quality and this group as a whole a little bit more. When you describe it as a weak year for the Derby, is that due specifically to the speed figures you've come up with that these horses are running, the defections from the race of the high-profile Bob Baffert barn? What makes you think it's not as strong of a group as we've seen in some years?
Well, I think it's a combination of those things that you mentioned, and just no one really stepping forward in my eyes. Now, maybe they will on Derby Day, and maybe they will in the later Triple Crown races, and I'll have to reevaluate my opinion. But as of now, Essential Quality looks the best to me. I think he ran a 97 buyer in the Bluegrass. He got an okay setup. that's just not inspiring to me in the historical Derby parameters. If there a lot of years, a horse that looks like Essential Quality would have been a board hitter type. He wouldn't have been the most likely winner. So that's the reason for for thinking that the field is a little weaker than usual this year. It's just I just don't see that exciting standout. Oh, I think this horse is just ready to explode type horse this year.
Looking at Essential Quality and trying to figure out how people are going to bet has given me a little bit of a headache, Mike. On one hand, what you're saying makes complete sense to me. From a figure standpoint, this isn't a horse with a tremendous advantage. On the other hand, here we have a race where favorites, with a couple of obvious exceptions, have done pretty well since the advent of the point system, and a horse that is an undefeated 2-year-old champion. If it was a sporting event based simply on past performances and taking the advanced analytics like speed figures off the table, I feel like he'd project to be a very heavy favorite, maybe more of a 2-to-1 type horse. Where do you think it's going to land with the betting on Essential Quality? Very tough betting market to predict, but what are your spidey senses tell you we're going to be looking at in terms of a price on the first Saturday in May?
Well, that's probably not the thing I'm best at. If I guessed, I would say 3-to-1 in that range, which in a 20-horse field, that's a pretty strong favorite. Here's the way I see, to go a little deeper into Essential Quality, I love that on your airways, on JK Plus One, actually, I heard Brad Cox say that this horse is only going to get better as he stretches out. And I think Brad Cox is, obviously one of the best young trainers we've seen in my lifetime. So some of the kind of outside factors, I would call them, like knowing the horse wants more distance, or feeling very confident that the extra distance is going to be his friend, and feeling a lot of confidence in the human connections. Brad Cox at Churchill Downs, that's a great situation. Louis Saez in career form, coming off a dominant meet at Keeneland, that gives me confidence. So there are a lot of factors that are coming together. Also, the horse's versatility. I mean, how do you give this horse a bad trip? And in a 20-horse field, that's so important. There are years where I've keyed horses and they later proved they were the best horse of that crop. But in the Derby, they couldn't get their trip. Things didn't work out for them. And if you've keyed them, you lose your money. I think that's less likely to happen with a rider like Saez and with a horse that's as versatile as Elusive Quality. If he breaks a step slow, he's not eliminated. He's shown that he can close from deep off the pace. And if the pace is soft and he draws a tough post and he needs to be sent a little bit to gain position early, he's proven he can do that. So there are a lot of factors about Essential Quality that point to him being the reliable horse to build your wagers around in this year's Derby.
Let's talk specifically about those wagers, Mike. What are you thinking specifically in terms of your verticals of how to play Essential Quality and those vertical keys? And then who are some of the other horses you have your eye on to come running with them?
I haven't gotten into deep handicapping of the Derby yet. I wish I had that kind of time on a day-to-day basis. It's
Sure.
Not that I wouldn't enjoy doing it, but I'm in a couple hours here, I'll be playing Indiana Downs, and I find somewhere to play every day. So, and usually more than one place to play every day. So, and that's that has to be job number one.
Of course,
taking care of the day-to-day business and trying to keep the boat moving. But I do have a horse that I'm hoping will draw in. I'm always looking for, once I've found the key horse in a race like the Derby, and really there is no race like the Derby. When do we bet 20 horse fields? So when I'm playing superfectas and super high fives, which I always participate in those wagers on, in the Derby, and it's hard to just single key a horse and try to get one of those wagers home. It's just cost prohibitive. I don't know. Maybe you know this. Are they going to stick with the 10-cent super for the Derby this year, or will they revert back?
The rumor is we're looking at a $1 super, but it's not been confirmed.
Okay. Well, I was rolling through some bet structures that I normally, that I've used in the past that I'll normally make. In super high five, for instance, I wrote down here that if you use 4 horses in the top 3 slots in the super high five, which that's in a 20 horse field, that's narrowing down significantly. And then you go all in the 4th, 5th slot trying to pick up that bomb. For $1, I think that's a $6,500 ticket. And then I went back and used the techniques that I like to use and said, okay, let's say you take Essential Quality to be 1-2 in the race, and you use those same other contenders that you used in the top 3 slots. And then you find a horse that you think can be the finisher in the race, the horse to pick up pieces that can run 4th or 5th. If you're willing to double key, if you're willing to say that both those things have to happen, that Essential Quality has to run 1st or 2nd, and that this bottom type dinker horse has to run 4th or 5th, you can accomplish using those same horses, having all in 4th and 5th, and using those other 3 contenders in the top 3 slots for less than $400 as compared to $6,500. So that's the type of thing that I'm looking toward doing. I haven't found that running on the bottom horse yet. I have found him. He's not in yet. It's Keepmeinmind. That's the horse. That's the horse I'm really interested in. I think he's the second man out right now. I think King Fury is 21 and Keepmeinmind is 22. Keepmeinmind has, he ran a big race in the juvenile last year, and his starts so far this year he's been compromised by paces and by trips, and he just hasn't got the right setup. He's a horse that wants to drop back, settle, and make one run. And so far, David Cohen hasn't been able to get him to settle in his races. And I understand some of the reasons why. He was in a paceless race last time, and he got caught up outside and got caught a little too close to the pace. But I think if he draws in, and with the pace that I would anticipate in the Derby being a very solid pace, I think he's able to drop back, get turned off, and then come with his run. And I would feel real good about playing that double key this year in the super high five.
You gave us the math on the super high five, but it's a very similar dynamic and potentially even more player friendly in a bet like the superfecta, is it not?
It is. It's, it saves you a lot of money. You're taking more risks. You're less likely to cash, but even with a significant bankroll and playing for a living, I'm not a fan of $6,500 $1 part wheels. So I'm always looking for angles to limit my risk, limit my exposure, while not losing too much of the chance to actually cash the ticket.
Well, you're enough of a regular listener, Mike, to know that we're a huge fan of the production meeting in the middle of the show here. So we're going to have one now. Wasn't planning on making you do double duty talking about Essential Quality and Keep Me in Mind, but that's just the way the conversation worked out here. So I'll ask you one more follow up on Keep Me in Mind before I let you get out of here today. I think a lot of people will be surprised coming off those 2 races this year that this is a horse that has caught your attention. Is it mainly that big run over the surface in the Kentucky Jockey Club, or are you seeing something subtle in, I know you're a believer in looking not just at final figures, but also internal pace numbers as well? Is there something else tipping this horse's hand that he might have more ability than he's been able to show in the brace of races this year?
Well, I actually think he showed enough ability last year in the juvenile. He came with his run, and I think if he just repeats that performance, he'll probably do what I need him to do. So I understand every race that Keep Me in Mind has run. I think he's just a pace dependent horse that that he hasn't gotten his setup the last couple of times, and the rider, and it's hard to fault the rider for this, but the rider, instead of staying true to the horse's optimum style, the rider has tried to adjust to the dynamics of the race, and thinking that he can keep him a little closer and still have that punch. And I just don't think he's that horse. I think he's a one-dimensional deep closer, and that in the Derby, if he does get in, he'll get the pace scenario that best lets him use his talents.
Good stuff, Mike. Fantastic analysis of both Essential Quality and Keep Me in Mind. Hopefully we'll have a chance to check in with you, if nothing else on social media before the big day, get your thoughts as they continue to evolve. But you've given us some great stuff, not just in terms of handicapping, but also thinking about this race from a wagering perspective, something you write about so well in Betting with an Edge. Thank you so much for your time today. It was great catching up with you.
Thank you, Pete. Good to talk with you.
There's not too many people in racing that when I just look at them, I smile. My man, Kendrick Carmouche, what's going on?
Oh, everything good, Jonathon. Life is good. Another blessed day. We thank God that we woke up to see another day. We just got to keep it pushing from here.
Man, I tell you what, I'm a fan of Eric. I didn't know who to root for when you and Eric were going down to the wire at Aqueduct, but I can tell you one thing. I was just happy. I was happy that both you guys were having success. And as it pertains to you, I know that we've talked about it, some of the difficulties. New York's a tough colony. You're riding with, in my opinion, it's not even close, the best colony in the country. And sometimes it's hard to break through there. And it really feels like this year is like, it's been like the year of Kendrick. You got that grade 1 checked off the list. You were right there for the riding title checked off the list. And now you're going to make your first start in the Kentucky Derby.
Well, the last 6 months of my career been every bit of what I've been dreaming to have, and looking forward for that opportunity from a big trainer like Todd Pletcher and some of the other guys that joined the team that contribute to my success this winter, and the grade 1, which was so sweet, man. I mean, coming from a boy from Louisiana and making it through small rinks and parks and Monmouth, Maryland, Charlestown, Oakland. I've been all over to finally get that grade 1 in there. And now the Wood Memorial, now we go and run for the Roses. Ah, man, they better be ready. I know my horse ready. I know, hey, I'm going with the best trainer, top trainer, Hall of Fame trainer. He been there way more than I done been there. I know I just got to go put up my performance.
Now, I love that video of you after the race. It was on social somewhere of you saying, I told you I was going to take him back, make one run. Tell me a little about your trip in the Wood Memorial.
Oh, man, I tell you, my horse warm up good. I usually warm him up without the pony, but I didn't want to get him too pumped up because I know I just wanted him to relax the first quarter of a mile where I could have get him in his rhythm, and going down the backside into the turn, I kind of had to get him where I had him sitting underneath me. And once we turned on the backside, man, I had him in such a good rhythm. And I'm just sitting there. I'm, I can feel Eric I can see Eric grabbing his horse, and he's starting to get a little closer to these horses. So I just kept my eye on him, because he'd be the horse that'll push everybody out, where I could have managed to get to the outside of him. And at the half a mile pull, I started licking my chops. I said, wow, I reach and grab this horse. I reach and grab him. I was sitting underneath me, and I kicked him in the ribs. And I was like, wow, I got some horse. I got 3 more goggles left. So I'm saying to myself, Kendrick, stay on the rail. Just don't wait. You're going to have to wait to pull these last 2 goggles. By the time I got to the quarter pull, I reach and grab this horse. I just pulled 2 of them right away. I said, I got to get outside. Here I come. I look up and I say, they in trouble. I got him. I know I got him. And believe me, the last 3-4 jumps, you could have felt my horse just like start leaping to the wire. I say, it's all over, boys. It's all over, man. Just a joy, man. A joy, man. I can only imagine how much the people around the world that I didn't touch by doing so much in 6 months and just making a lot of people proud, man. It makes me smile even more,
Yeah, look, and it's not the whole story. I mean, I think the whole story is you and the success and the grind and the hustle from a guy who was winning titles at parks and in Philadelphia Park to where you are now. I think that's the story. But I do think that part of the story is the fact that there hasn't been a black jockey since 2013. And I think that people that, if I'm being honest, if I'm being frank, people that look like you and I, that have brown, black skin, it's a sense of pride for me. I know that when I see you having success, it makes me happy, because I know that it hasn't always been easy for lots of reasons, not just because of the color of your skin, but you're right. A lot of people are proud and rooting for you.
Yes, you got to inspire people, man. You got to inspire people from all colors, man. I really do feel that. Everybody have a plan in life, and God got a plan for them. You inspire people, man. Make people happy, man.
Where do you want to draw? Do you care? Does it matter with this horse?
I would love to get the one to the 10 hole to get inside, because I just want to save ground. My thing is saving ground with these horses coming from behind, and just being patient. I just want to be patient. I just want to be very patient with this horse. I know he's gonna make his run. I heard he had a good gallop out the other morning. If we get a good break, I would love to. If he breaks sharp, I'm gonna put him a little bit closer. I don't think I should be coming from that far like I did the last time, but I let the horse tell me once I get around the turn and see what I have underneath me.
Do you the 1.25 miles? No issues there?
The further the better, baby. The further the better. Oh. Hey, I tell you, I'm ready, man. My horse feel the vibe. My heart feels vibe. I think everything that's going on right now with Helium with winning the grade 1 on True Timber, and me winning the Wood Memorial on Bionic, biggest odds in history. I think that picture is looking really good, man.
You look good in those silks.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And we should tell everybody, just in case they didn't know. Are you going to be there? Are you riding all day Saturday, Friday? You're open. Tell them who. You're open. Let's go.
I'm open. Put me in, coach. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm coming to do the dance. I want the roses.
Oh, it would be awesome. I don't know. I think I'd have to have surgery on my face. I would be smiling so much if you were to pull it off.
Oh, well, I'm there already.
Well, I tell you what, Kendrick, I appreciate you taking the time. We're rooting for you like hell on the first Saturday in May, and we're rooting for you on Thursday at Belmont, and Wednesday at Saratoga, and Sunday at Aqueduct. We're always rooting for you. We appreciate it. We appreciate the energy you bring to this game.
Oh, thank you very much for having me, man. I just want to say one love, family. We all one love.
Perfect, man. That was awesome.
All right, Jonathon.
All right, brother. I'll see you in Louisville. When are you going?
We leaving Thursday. I think Stretch got us all leaving out Thursday night after we ride.
Okay.
And
All right,
then
I'll
we
see
do
you.
that Friday.
Yeah, I'll be there the whole time.
Hey, Jonathan, I want you to know, don't you be slipping on my filly running in the Oaks now.
Which one's that one?
For Rob Actress. I finished second behind Chad Brown.
Oh, Maracuja?
Maracuja. I'm
glad we're still recording. I'm going to leave this in.
Don't forget, don't go to sleep on her.
I won't.
They have pink roses one day and they have red roses the other day. We're trying to get both of them. I'm telling you.
Let's just get some roses. All right, man. We'll see you down there.
All right. Be good, my brother.
Next up on the show, extremely happy to be joined by a man who has so many impressive credits in the saddle. And these days on the broadcasting front, he is the co-host of the Exacta Box podcast. They've also got a robust YouTube channel bringing fantastic information about racing to Spanish language listeners and viewers. I am talking about my personal favorite jockey of all time, Ramon Dominguez. Ramon, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Pete. Thank you for having me.
You were one of the first people I reached out to about this project, Ramon, and I asked you if you had your pick of horses to speak about in this year's Kentucky Derby, who would it be? And you mentioned Rock Your World. Why did he come to the top of your mind for this year's Kentucky Derby?
Yes, and there are so many horses that we can, of course, as we get closer to the Derby, make a case for. Rock Your World is one of those that certainly stands out to me because his debut on the dirt was incredible. It was going 2 turns, first time on the dirt. Prior to that, he only ran twice on the turf, both times short and long. So I guess the horse had been working well on the dirt. However, you just never know, especially against that competition in the Santa Anita Derby, how he was going to react. And the horse went to the lead on their very fast fractions. And as he's turning for home, I'm watching him. And it appears to me as he's starting to slow down. And right away, I'm thinking, well, he's done. He just went too fast. And sure enough, he kind of collected himself and rebroke and finished up pretty strong. Galloped out just as strong as well. And he ran a very fast race. When we talk about numbers in terms of the speed figures and the buyer numbers, he ran a 100 buyer, which is pretty high. So he had every excuse, giving, again, first time over the surface, going that far and going that fast as well, that he could have stopped and we would have said, yes, it was a good race, but he didn't. He kept going. So does that mean that he's going to continue to positively move forward? We don't know that, but he has already shown just with that one race that he belongs and he's a serious player.
Whether you're riding a horse, Ramon, or watching videos, what are things you look for in a horse to understand whether or not they are a need the lead type or whether they might be able to sit just off a pace and pass runners? I know that's one of the big questions others have had about Rock Your World. I've heard many say, oh, well, he needs the lead. Based on looking at his body of work, personally, I don't see it that way. But before you answer the question of if you think Rock the World needs the lead, what in general lets you know if a horse needs the lead or might be able to settle?
So I think that as an observer or as a fan, it's very difficult to predict that because sometimes you see horses handling themselves with a lot of ease or being able to relax and respond to the jockey's cues. But you just never know when they are under pressure how they will react. So you get a better idea when you are on their back, and despite that, you still don't know until the horse is under that scenario. So I'm a firm believer that although there are horses that have proven that they are one-dimensional, and let's just say they need to have the lead. In most cases, these horses, of course, have a natural talent and natural speed, but we as humans are the one who have conditioned them to just be that way and to go to the lead and to show speed. And sometimes these horses haven't gotten dirt in their face, for example. That's a very important one. So when they do, they don't react well, and you say, well, the horse just has to be in front. So if they were exposed to maybe some more dirt, or maybe in the morning being surrounded by horses and being behind horses, and they get accustomed to that, then we will realize that that is not necessarily a horse that has to be on the lead. I know that I'm getting a little winded in my answer, but there is really no one simple way to respond to that, because you just don't know until the horse is under that scenario. So when we talk about Rock Your World, and I'm going against what I was just mentioned, because I will now just give my opinion as an observer, and it is extremely important to see that despite how fast the fractions were, his body language showed that he was doing it with ease. So that's great, because he's a horse that has a high cruising speed, so he's able to position himself whether in front or near the lead fairly easy, or that's something that is going to come natural for him. The question that remains again is in these type of races, typically horses tend to go a little bit faster than they need to. Maybe the jockeys are under pressure as well, but so if he doesn't have the lead, will he able to do just as good? Now, we do know that he has enough tactical speed to position himself in a very good spot where most likely he doesn't have to be getting there. So that is a very key component. Even if the horse doesn't make the lead, the fact that he's not getting there on his face, he probably will be okay.
For me, hearing you talk about it and thinking about that issue of the kickback, for me, Rock Your World is a horse I would much prefer to see him drawn outside. I worry if he's drawn far inside, first 3 or 4 posts, maybe that's a trickier scenario. But I feel like if he breaks outside, he should be able to gather himself and use that tactical speed you describe to be able to get himself out of trouble. Maybe if he's not on the lead, maybe he's a little bit wide and off the pace, but in the clear, I'd feel better about a horse who's never faced kickback heading into a Kentucky Derby in that scenario. What about you? Do you think, is that an overblown concern for me potentially, or do you think the outside draw could prove critical to a runner like Rock Your World?
It is definitely a very valid point, and it's actually something that there has been a lot of dilemma or controversy always surrounding the Derby. What post position is better, the inside and the outside? The truth is that even if you have, let's just say, the 1 hole or the 20th hole in the Kentucky Derby, when you run a line from the 20th position and from the position 1 to the rail at the last point before they enter the first turn, the difference is minimal. It's just a couple feet. And however, maneuvering to go into that first turn can be quite tricky with so many horses. So in the case of, let's just say, Run Your World, and going back to your explanation, I do agree, because having an outside post can be beneficial if you don't get the best break out of there, because now you don't have to be worried about pushing the horse to maintain your position if you were on the inside. On the outside, you can a little bit dictate as to when you want to come in or how fast you want to go before you cross over. But if the horse breaks clean and he's able to establish himself in a good position, one of the pros of having an inside post is that you don't have to be negotiating ground. You are already on the rail where you want to be, even if you were on the outside. That's the issue, that you want to be able to come over, and sometimes that is a little bit difficult.
Speaking of post positions, it's sort of become accepted among horse players anyway that if you draw the rail, you don't really have much chance in the Kentucky Derby. I mean, that to me seems a little exaggerated for sure. But why does it seem like the rail, from a jockey's point of view, is such a disadvantage in the Derby, whereas in your average 2-turn race, it seems to be a place where people want to be?
Well, I will have to say, and this is, I'm just throwing thoughts because I don't know for sure, but the Kentucky Derby, unlike most 2-turn races, is just crazy to say the least, going into that first turn. I mean, as a jockey, and you can ask probably any jockey who has participated in the Kentucky Derby, it's just insane going to the first turn, because It is too many horses going for one spot, which is trying to save ground to the rail. So if you're on the inside, and again, if you don't have tactical speed, you are at the mercy of what everybody else is doing. In your position or the position that you want to have, or perhaps you already have, is going to be taken. You're going to be bounced around, and so it gets a little crazy. And being on the inside sometimes is just deadly going into the first turn because you cannot maintain a good position.
Makes sense to me. It's such a crazy cavalry charge. I mean, maybe if you could just get out of there and clear, you'd be okay. But if anything goes wrong, you're going to have to face the stress of all those riders trying to get into that spot. I'm putting our little slide up on screen now with some of the basic stats about Rock Your World, including that 100 buyer speed figure that you mentioned, and noting his achievement in the Santa Anita Derby. I'll note I have the international price here. It's come in since this slide was made, seeing Rock Your World as short as 4-1 in places now. But the most interesting thing as I look at this slide, Ramon, that I want to ask you about is the jockey booking. On our slides, we put the riders who rode the horse in their last start. That was Umberto Rispoli for Rock Your World. Announcement has come out that he's going to be replaced in the saddle for the Kentucky Derby. What are your thoughts on this as a former rider, as an analyst? I mean, for me, it's hard for my heart not to break a little bit for Rispoli under these circumstances.
And I do too, and I'm sure that John Sadler does as well, and the connections. It is one of those cases that you don't want to be in that position if you are the rider, and really, to be honest, either rider, because even Rosario, I'm sure that he's super happy to be on the horse, but at the same time, knowing him, he does feel bad about the situation. It's just the nature of the sport, and in the future, Rispoli will be in that position where they will be taking somebody off to put him on because he earned that position. Now, in interviews with John Sadler, I read that he said it was a tough call. However, the connections of the horse, the owners have had a great trajectory, a great history with Joel Rosario and John Sadler as well, winning the Big Breeders' Cup race. So this, when Joel became available because Concertor, because he's not going to the Derby, that's something that they say, well, we need to get him. So going into the Derby, you don't want to give any chances. So anything that you do, that you can do to maximize the chances of winning the race, you do it. And this is something that in their mind, having Rosario will be an asset, whether it is or not, that is what they're thinking. So it's hard to really go against that. At the end of the day, they are the owners, and that's what they want to do, and that's what they will do. And it's funny because after Concertor didn't run or didn't win the races he was supposed to, or we were anticipating, and then shortly after, when Buffer announced that he wasn't going to Derby, the first thing that came to mind is like, I know that they let go, they didn't stay with Hard Rock Charlie, and I was wondering who is Rosario going to ride, if he's going to ride anybody. So when this happened, it made sense. At the same time, again, the biggest issue at this point is the fact that Umberto Rispoli didn't do anything wrong, and it seems fair in some ways, but again, part of the business.
It's complicated, but yeah, you're very sanguine about it as somebody who's been on both ends of the situation, no doubt, many times. For me as a gambler, Rosario, a rider, I love him on a hold-up type runner in particular, but he's certainly a strong finisher and somebody who, even with his speed horses, feels like he gets that little bit of something out of them in the stretch. How do you think Rosario suits Rock Your World in the Derby?
Yeah, Rosario is one of my favorite riders for sure. Not only as a person, he's an amazing person, but when it comes to running a closer, I don't think there is anybody who's stronger than him. And by stronger, I don't mean the physical strength down the road, down the lane. It's just the first part of the race. His connection with the horse is unreal, and they always seem to come flying. Now, with a front runner, he also has proven that he has the hands to get them to relax great. So those are two opposite there from a deep closer and a front runner, he does above a good job. He does an amazing job. He's somebody who connects with the horse very well and will be able to put him where he's supposed to be. So I have no concerns at all about him being able to do a great job with this horse. Now, the short amount of time that I have been following Rispoli, he's an amazing jockey as well. So I think that it was once again a tough decision there. And either way, I don't think that they would have chosen wrong.
Makes sense. Now, we got to let you go. We've kept you over time, Ramon, but folks can obviously find you on the Exacta Box YouTube channel, the Exacta Box podcast on the In the Money Media Network. Where can folks find more from you about this year's Derby?
So we will be generating some content that, as you said, we will be posting it both on YouTube and also on our Intermedia podcast. So we are foreseeing doing a lot of great, interesting things. We're already putting everything in line. So yes, very much looking forward to Derby weekend.
You'll be on site at Churchill Downs, it sounds like?
Correct. Yes, we will be there. Yep.
Fantastic. All right. We look forward to hearing much more from you for this Derby and beyond. Ramon Dominguez, thank you so much for your time today. Always a pleasure, my friend.
Likewise. Thank you, Pete.
Acacia, what's going on?
Hey, JK, thanks for having me today. A little bit different scenario than our typical America's Day at the races meetings.
Yeah, usually I just hear you in my ear. I don't even see you, but nonetheless, it's fun. I'm excited about Saratoga, excited about Belmont. I'm assuming you're going to hang out there the entire time.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to kick off things at Belmont on Thursday. We just wrapped up Aqueduct and looking forward to Saratoga, looking forward to, it looks like getting to have some fans, some crowd back, which will be really fun and really special to be able to have that. And yeah, it's an exciting time of year as we're looking forward to all these big stakes.
Well, just make sure you save anything leopard print for Saratoga. We'll wear it in the same day. I have tons of leopard print things. So you got it. We'll have to meet early in the paddock and get like new headshots with both of us. In leopard.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Enough of that nonsense. We're rolling through these Derby horses, and you spend the winter down in South Florida at Gulfstream. And so your Derby horse that we wanted to talk to you about was Soup and Sandwich. Obviously, it's a fun name. Tell me a little bit about how you feel about Soup and Sandwich and his chances going into the Kentucky Derby.
Well, it's funny. He's not exactly my, Derby pick, but he's one I'm really intrigued by. And I haven't made my Derby pick, to be honest, yet. I'm that type of person that until they draw the field, I'm not going to really zero in full in on one horse because I just think so much can happen between now and then, and so much can happen with the draw and everything as well. But Soup and Sandwich has speed, which is a very big commodity no matter where you're racing. And as we've typically seen in the past with the Kentucky Derby, horses that are forwardly placed do seem to have a bit of a tactical advantage. You look at a horse like Maximum Security in the past, Always Dreaming was forwardly placed. Horses that have that ability, Authentic head speed, to kind of be up in the game early on, I think have a big advantage. So I saw him first time out when he won against fellow Florida breds sprinting. And my notes that day were that he was really sharp, that I wanted to see him go longer, and that he looked like he was going to be very quick. So he won first time out, which I thought he did really easily and looked like he was pulling away. I know at Tampa, he was only running against a 3-horse field. I think he actually faced some decent horses that day, though, and it was a 2-turn prep for stretching out in the Florida Derby. He was beaten in the Florida Derby behind Known Agenda. He was on that pace early on. He has that early speed. Now, I had at first thought he's the typical Tappet. He's by Into Mischief, the hottest stallion in the world right now, but he's got Tappet on the bottom side, and he's gray. As you always hear me and Maggie Wolfendale say, those gray Tappet bred horses are a little bit nuts beforehand, and that's Soup and Sandwich. And Mark Casse even said that, if he could actually figure things out and not be so mental before the race, it might help him to save some more for the track. So that's something I'm going to be looking for heading into the first Saturday in May.
Yeah, poor Mark Casse. He gets a Derby horse. He had Classic Empire, who is a nut, and then he gets Soup and Sandwich, who obviously is a nut as well. What are some of the things that you'll be looking for when it comes to in the mornings when we're watching those workouts? Are you going to be paying a lot of attention to Soup and Sandwich and how he's behaving in the morning, how he's getting around there, or are you more concerned with how he's going to behave in the paddock and in the gate?
I'm more concerned when it comes to day of, because horses, like that. I mean, we talk about the typical tap it because it is in that sire line and in that family, in the genetics, that they're going to be very high energy, very hot almost. You see them just really kind of revved up on their toes, like a little bit of a hot mess before the race. He's also only raced 3 times. He's still kind of inexperienced compared to some of the others. He didn't race as a 2-year-old. I don't know the story. It might have taken a little bit more time to get him to the track. But mentally, he has had to overcome some challenges. So in the mornings, I'm not going to be looking so much at that. I know from him being stable down in Florida and based at Palmettos that he is a very fast workhorse. That's a typical of him. So his most recent work when he got to Churchill Downs with Tyler Gaffalione up was very quick. And that's just typical. So I like to see him staying and doing what he was doing all winter, but I'm just hoping that mentally he can build off of that for the afternoon.
From a pace standpoint, where do you see him being involved in the pace? Is there a draw you think works out better for him than others, or and where do you see the kind of the pace draw situation lining up for Soup and Sandwich? He's
very quick out of the gate, so I would be very surprised if he wasn't on or close to the lead. And that's his biggest weapon, really. Like I said, historically in the Kentucky Derby, horses with early speed, with foot, to be able to put themselves into the game early on, I think have an advantage. As far as draw, I mean, it's kind of a typical where everybody would like to be. I don't think you want to be all the way out in post 20 because your hand is really going to be forced to hustle out of the gate and try to get position early and drop in, because I think if he's not on the lead and Tyler makes the decision to take him back, it'd be a negative for him. So you're not going to have to hustle. From the inside, you've got all those horses trying to move over and get position, coming down over on you. But for him, if he's inside, it's not such a big deal because he's very fast out of the gate.
Talk a little bit about Tyler. Obviously, we got to see him in New York, and I think a lot of people get to see his success he had last year in Kentucky, but you also get to see him all winter, and you've got to see him really develop your time at Gulfstream. Do you think the stage is too big for Tyler? Do you like Tyler in this spot? Do you think he's got a lot to learn? What are your thoughts about Tyler in riding Soup and Sandwich?
No, I think I would never say that the stage is too big for him. I think that he's proved over the last couple of years. I mean, at Saratoga, maybe he didn't have as many wins as the Ortiz brothers, but it seemed like every weekend he was just picking up another grade 1 or a grade at stake, and I was interviewing him after the race. So I think that he's really risen to the occasion. And yeah, I started out in Florida. He was the champion apprentice, just riding there. And when you are riding year round in Florida, obviously in the winter, you've got some of the top jocks coming down there. When you go up to Kentucky, up to New York and try those bigger stages, that's where you really have to prove yourself. And I think he's really done that, especially over the past year. Rides a lot for Mark Casse, rode War of Will for Mark Casse to that Preakness victory. So they've had success together, and it feels like a logical choice. He is one that can be a little bit more aggressive. He's not one of those typical kind of strong gate riders that you would think of, but I think when you have a horse with early speed, and obviously that's something he's aware of, I like that he's in Kentucky working the horse beforehand as well.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Tyler. I think he does a great job. He he's kind of, I know he's close with the Ortiz brothers, and they kind of all feel the same. They're young guys that pay attention, that try hard and ride good horses, and I think that's a good recipe for success. Speaking of recipes, you're in New York. There's a lot of delis around there. What would be your Soup and Sandwich order?
Always a grilled cheese with tomato. Got to have the tomato. I'm with tomato. And I do it with a tomato soup. There's nothing better than a grilled cheese and tomato soup combo.
There it is. Grilled cheese and tomato soup. Thank you, Acacia. We'll see you soon.
Absolutely.
Next up in the Monster Pod, very happy to have another one of the guests that I could put in that bucket of most popular guests we get here on the In the Money Network. We're speaking to his business partner elsewhere in the show. He, like his business partner, is an accomplished horse player, especially in the contest realm, owner. The credits go on and on. Professor, I could be here all day given the guy's bio. Most recently, you probably saw his name when he won last year's Breeders' Cup betting challenge, beating that JK back into second. I'm talking, of course, about Marshall Gramm. Marshall, how are you?
Thanks for having me on. Doing well.
You're here today to talk about Caddo River, and that's where we're going to start. News coming out the day that we're recording this, the Caddo River will be pointed to this race. There was a lot of back and forth and interesting behind the scenes as to whether or not this horse was going to go. Now that they've made the decision, do you think it's the right one for Caddo River to take his shot in this year's Kentucky Derby?
Well, I don't think he's got much of a chance. I think I don't like the back and forth that they've had after the race. Right after the race, Brad talked about going to the Preakness. Then there was an article on Horse Racing Nation where the owner, John Ed Anthony, Loblolly Stables, now Shortleaf has had this long history of running the Triple Crown, and he was complaining about the Triple Crown, complaining about the series, and just didn't come off like someone who's going to the Derby. And now they've decided to run. So I don't, I always worry about connections that aren't immediately enthusiastic about going, and whether that this, what their decision making process is behind this. As far as Caddo River, the horse goes, he's a front runner. He probably needs to wire the field to win. There have not been many wire to wire winners of the Kentucky Derby. And if you look at these wire to wire winners, Authentic, Always Dreaming, Maximum Security, First Across the Wire, Go for Gin, War Emblem, Spend a Buck, Winning Colors, all of them had tremendous late finish. They ran the final 3/8 of a mile of their mile and eighth prep very quickly, right? So I think that's the one thing that separates them from other horses. It's been done very few times in the past 35 years, and those horses that have done it all in their prep races finish their final 3/8 very quickly. So if you use sort of pace figures, whether it's Timeform US, you can see those numbers reflected in Always Dreaming and Authentic and Maximum Security. And even if you go back to Go for Gin and War Emblem, Spend a Buck, those horses finished in under 38 for their last 3/8 of a mile. If you look at Caddo River, they came home in 39.67, and he lost 2.5 lengths in the stretch, just teasing out that final 3/8 sort of late pace number from Timeform US. He ran a 66, whereas Authentic ran a 114 at Monmouth. Always Dreaming ran a 134 in the Florida Derby. Maximum Security ran a 146 in the Florida Derby. So he was decelerating. Now, the pace was very quick, but you can compare that to Winning Colors in 1989 with a quick pace. She finished in 38 and 2/5, but she lengthened her lead from 2.5 to 7.5 lengths after running the first 3/4 in 109 and 2. And again, Caddo River was decelerating much more quickly, and I worry about what that means for the race as a whole. So I'm not big on super stock either. So could he get loose on the lead, get brave? He's shown he's a tough horse the past when given the lead. He's still, these are horses that are still developing. Hard spun horses can get the distance, and so maybe in an ideal world he gets loose on the lead and they don't catch him. I would say that's 50-1 possibility. So wouldn't let him go off longer than that. I don't think he will. Could he hit the board? Again, under the right scenario, loose on the lead, getting brave, maybe he could, but he's unlikely to be on any of my tickets.
Sounds much more like a pace factor, and certainly interesting for other runners who have shown the ability to run on or near the pace. His main effect in the race might be diminishing their chances. And I'll say this, Marshall, as you were talking, I was thinking if this horse is going to lead there to be a faster than average pace in the Derby, two factors that often lead to long shots coming in, by my reckoning, are races where horses haven't run the historical speed figure par and races with unusual pace scenarios in one way or another. So I feel like Caddo River being involved does increase the chances that we might see a horse win this year's Kentucky Derby at a very big number. Does that sound like solid logic to you?
Well, I think the other important thing to remember here is that why does Brad want to run this horse? I mean, Brad really hasn't been to the Derby before and had a chance to go with Shared Sense, who was a big long shot last year. So, what is his motivation? He likes to win races. He's very really looks to run his horses where they're low odds. Why is he here? In part, Caddo River can act as a rabbit to ensure a quick enough pace for Essential Quality. So, I'm sure in the back of his mind, he's thinking, it doesn't have to be breakneck, but it can ensure an honest pace. And Essential Quality, it needs at least an honest pace to run into. So that's, I think that could be part of it. But could we get could this whole thing deteriorate and we get a bomb? I mean, I think absolutely.
It is a good point. It could play into the hands of the favorite, a little bit of de facto team tactics there. While I have you, Marshall, we've talked in the past, and I think it's a point reiterating year to year about some of the unusual wagering phenomena we see year in, year out in the Kentucky Derby. You came on our airwaves last year. You told us to pay attention to the place pools in particular that very often, place a bet that most sharp players eschew 364 days of the year. On the Derby, you can see some anomalies that work in the player's favor. And we saw it with a horse like Tis the Law, who ultimately ended up paying as much to place pretty much as he would have to win. Is that place pool phenomenon something you have your eye on this year? Anything else from a wagering point of view you advise people to take a look at a little bit differently into the Kentucky Derby?
Well, I think they're two important phenomena. There's one is the place pool, and one is the unusual horse that gets bet for whatever reason that no one can figure out. So the place pool is something I'll definitely watch. It's these favorites, typically heavy favorites in the Derby, tend to get underbet in the place and show pools. Last year, Tis the Law would have paid the same to win as he did to place, and so I would keep an eye on that. Now, we don't have a heavy favorite, but could we end up in a scenario where Essential Quality, pays $6 or $7 to win, and then potentially $5 or $6 to place? I think it's worth looking at. The way to do this is that most ADWs have the percentage breakdown of the win, place, and show pool by horse, right? So if you see a horse like Essential Quality taking 25% of the win pool and 12% of the place pool, then that may offer a betting opportunity. So it's something to keep an eye on. I think it's less likely because there's no real standouts this year. If it's going to be on a particular horse, it will be Essential Quality. And I think, he's a particularly good horse for this bet because he's a horse that, with the right trip he can win, but probably given his, breeding and his ability, should have a big shot to hit the board. So, I think his place and show probability are probably higher than what you would impute from his win probability. So that's something to look at. Another thing is we always get a horse for whatever reason that gets overbet on Derby Day based on their name or some other factor. Most notable is my boy Jack in 2018. He was projected to be 18-1 coming out of the doubles, and he went off at 6-1. If you factor that in, that's a 6.4% takeout reduction. Now, those horses can win, but it's a huge takeout reduction, and they make those horses typically unbettable. Sort of going through the last 4 years with him, Patch projected the 75-1, went off at 14-1. That was a 4.4% takeout reduction, right? Had one eye, became the story. A Gray Magician, for whatever reason, 85-1 down to 33-1, 1.5%. Now, that's a small takeout reduction, but still noteworthy. Maybe Game of Thrones related. Money Moves last year, 23-1 down to 13.1, 2.4% takeout reduction. Again, fairly small. I think this year it's Super Sandwich, right? Isn't that the name that people are going to?
Super Sandwich, yes.
Yeah, isn't that the name people are going to gravitate to and bet? Now, that horse has a real shot, but could get overbet. I don't know. Again, it's something to watch. When you're getting a 4 to 6% takeout reduction, then it makes all those other horses win odds more attractive. Now, again, I don't think this creeps into exotics. So, I think, as we see these numbers, I'm imputing from the original odds, I'm imputing from the doubles. And so I think doubles, exactas, trifectas, those are unaffected. But I think the win pool draws a lot of naive, casual, once a year type money, non-horse player money, people who want to have a bet on the Derby. And so that's going to do very funny things with the prices. That's going to keep all the prices low, right? And so, people tend to overbet long shots. I think the most notable is Mind That Bird, who should have been 200-1 and was 50-1. And of course, he won the race, right? And that kept the number of long shots down. And I think especially in a year like this that looks, to me, really wide open, the long shots will tend to be overbet, and maybe some of our favorites will drift up. But I'm looking at Soup and Sandwich to be our overbet horse of the Derby. And again, could win, but likely to get overbet based upon the catchy name.
I was wondering, the other one that comes to mind maybe is Hot Rod Charlie, in the same sense of my boy Jack, with a name, and everybody's got an Uncle Charlie, and there you go. But Soup and Sandwich, the irreverence of that name, I could see that absolutely happening too. It's going to be fun to pay attention to. We appreciate the reminders about this stuff, and I bet you somewhere when you were talking about those pool percentage overlays, Marshall, Dr. Z was smiling.
Yep, this is where all this comes from. Dr. Z and the 1970 system to arb the place and show pool. One of my first starts at looking at the races and trying betting arbitrage was through Dr. Z, a great man.
Nobody better at talking about the math of this game and also understanding the fun of the game. Marshall Gramm from our founding partners, 10 Strike Racing. Thank you very much, Marshall. We'll be talking soon.
I appreciate it, Pete. Thanks for having me on.
Chris Fallica, what's going on? How are you?
I'm doing well. One of the better times of the year coming up. We got NFL draft, Kentucky Derby, PGA coming up. So it's spring is here, and the sun is out, so life is good.
The word on the streets is that your travel agent's going to be a little bit busy. You've got the draft, and then you're going to hit a red eye.
We are myself and Kirk Herbstreit are going to be headed out from Cleveland right after the draft on Friday night. Head on over to the plane and head on down to Louisville. So we'll probably get in around 1 a.m. or so, I would think, on Saturday, and get over to the track at some time in the morning. I have a daily wager hit for the show that'll be on at noon on Saturday. But yeah, I will be in attendance, and I'm really looking forward to, because believe me, this was like a big source of like stress and tension and anxiety for me, seeing that the draft was the same weekend as the Kentucky Derby. But we're done after Friday night, so we're gonna be there in person Saturday. It's gonna be great.
How many derbies have you been to?
Oh gosh, I'd say at least, I don't have an exact count. It's at least a half a dozen, probably closer to 10. There was a run where I hadn't gone for a while. Like I had gone to Barbaro, and then I hadn't been to another one like until Super Saver. And then obviously I was there for Country House, but I was there for a good number of the ones in the late 90s to the early part of 2000. So I would say, if I had to guess, I would say at least 8.
That's pretty fun. I love that about racing and about the Kentucky Derby, is that I don't really remember the years. I just remember the horses, and I identify the race as the horses. Like, Orbs Derby, it ran. It's like yep. When you win the race, it becomes your Derby that year. So, well, when we reached out to you and we asked who you wanted to talk about, you are predicting that the 2021 Derby will be referred to moving forward as the highly motivated Derby.
Ooh,
what is it
nice.
about this? What is it about this horse that you like?
I like it because I think the pattern that he has shown, it points to me as him coming up to a really big race, and probably his career best race in the Bluegrass. Off of the Bluegrass race. In that race, like, that was not his preferred running style. Going to the lead, and sure, the pace was decent, but that's not his preferred running style. Maybe it was just a victim of circumstance where there wasn't much pace in the race, and Javier just tried to say, okay, we're going to go and see how far we can go, and they nearly held off Essential Quality. In the Derby, he's going to get to have his more favored type running style from off the pace, where he's going to have others in the race, horses like Medina Spirit and some other speed horses in that race to do his dirty work. And I think he'll have a much better run and be much stronger later in the race. Yeah, some people have some questions about his ability to get this distance, and we'll see ultimately if that rings true. But I might be in the minority here. I probably am in the minority here. But out of that Bluegrass, I would much rather have Highly Motivated than I would Essential Quality.
Yeah, the thing about Highly Motivated is I'm guilty of it, to be fair, about maybe assuming that maybe shorter will be better. But I honestly think that that's really just connections. And, it was a practical joke, right? He ran in the Bluegrass, Chad Brown, Clarvich Stables, cutting back. He still is a talented horse. He ran well in the Derby, well enough in the Derby. But I think Highly Motivated is a little bit different. He's got everything you like. He's got a great trainer, great rider. He's well bred. He's got 2-year-old foundation. He's improving. So you feel like he will not be forward. He'll be able to kind of get that perfect Derby trip stalking the pace.
Yeah, that's what I think. And I know a majority of these derbies have been won from right on the pace for the most part since they went to the point system. But I think if you just go back through his past performances, the maiden win where he beat Note Agenda very easily, and obviously Note Agenda's turned into a nice horse. You look at the one in Nyquist, and then the Gotham, that was that first race off of a long layoff, and that was a weird race where there was the track appeared to be pretty biased, and there was a fluke winner there in Weyburn, and I don't think. I think he just went to the front in the Bluegrass because there really was no other speed in that race. Was the field very good behind he and Essential Quality? No, but at the same time, I think coming out of that race, I don't want to say the Bluegrass was a prep for the Kentucky Derby in a sense that we're just going to get the horse a workout, send him to the front, and if he wins, great. If not, he's tighter for the race in Louisville a month from now. But I do like the fact that he seemed to be sharp, show a lot of speed, and I think he'll be much more relaxed coming from a bit off the pace on May the 1st.
Do you have a preference when you're watching the draw on Tuesday? Do you have a preference of where you want this horse that you've got so much interest in betting on? Do you have an interest where he draws?
I prefer to be out to the outside, as long as you're not stuck down in post 1, 2, or 3. I still think we might need to have a little bit more data with the new starting gate, with the way that's going to affect things now. Because obviously, with the 2 gates and the way they angle start, you do not want to be inside there. 15, 16 were bad spots to be in. So I think we probably need a little bit more data, but I still think outside is the way to go, just because you just don't want to be buried inside, especially with a field that appears to probably have about, I would say, five horses that are just total filler in the race that have no shot, that are going to be super, super long. But so I think if you're outside, you're able to kind of, maybe you have to run a little bit further, but I think you're going to get a much cleaner trip by being outside.
In watching your work on College Game Day, I've learned very quickly that there's a big aspect of your game that's value, and finding that value with poor lines or overhyped favorites. What is the number? Usually, I would fail if someone asked me this question. I'm awful at this game. What's the price that's kind of your cutoff? Where are you thinking and hoping highly motivated lands?
I'm hoping he's 10-1. I think you'll probably get Known Agenda up there. Rock Your World, I would think, would be probably second choice behind Essential Quality. So I would think Holly Middle will probably be somewhere around. Hot Rod Charlie will probably be right around that 8-1, 10-1 range as well. So I would think 10-1 is probably the price that I'd be looking at here. And again, this is a poor question for me as well, because I think this is one of those tests that I would absolutely fail as well. But I would expect 10-1 would be a nice price. And what was Normandy Invasion? I'm only thinking Normandy Invasion a couple of years ago. That was the Orb year, because he ran third in that race, I think it was, to Orb. And at the same time,
this is my favorite thing to do. It's where I do this all the time on the podcast, where I just start talking about something that isn't anything, and then while I'm doing it, I'm Googling and it'll help me if it's
Klarovich, Javier, and Chad Brown, right?
Yeah. Let's see.
I'm just curious to see. What his odds were.
He was 9-1.
There we go. So probably, yeah, he'll probably be. I think he'll probably be apropos and nothing, with absolutely no relevance on this year at all. I would think 10-1 probably would be a better good price.
Chad's a little bit more popular now than he was then, but
he is, especially being that he's actually done a little bit better on the dirt than he had back then in 2015.
Well, Bear, we appreciate you taking the time. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you for any value you see in college football national championship wagers to get out ahead of these futures. Anything that you saw on the board that looked good?
The one thing I would be looking at, it's tied to the season opening game. Georgia plays Clemson in Charlotte week 1 in a game that the loser still has a great chance to make the college football playoff if they simply win out. And obviously Clemson, with that ACC schedule, probably will not face any real stiff competition in the ACC this year. Remember, Notre Dame is not playing an ACC schedule this year, so the Irish will not be in that ACC title game. And Georgia, if you look at the Bulldog schedule, they will likely be favored in every game up until the SEC championship game, where they would have to face most likely Alabama, long shot A&M, or LSU. But remember, Georgia does have the injury issue at wide receiver now with George Pickens being out. So I would say Georgia, Clemson right now would be the two that I would play early, because the winner, the odds will fall after that one game. However, the loser, you'll have an opportunity, maybe if you want to reinvest, probably get a little bit better price than the loser, just because their margin of error is gone, because they will have a loss in the loss column.
Reinvest. If you hit highly motivated, you run it back and you bet Georgia and Clemson win the national championship. Bear, I appreciate it. I hope I run into you at Churchill on Saturday.
Definitely. I do as well. Be well.
Joining us now on the Kentucky Derby Monster Pod to talk about the Bob Baffert contender. Guy's only won the race 6 times, so we should probably talk about his horse. The horse is Medina Spirit, and the guest, you know from her various work all over the television and right here on the In the Money Media Network, vis-a-vis the Owner's Box podcast, Michelle Yu. Michelle, how are things?
I'm great, Pete.
I want you to talk about this horse. You know, we were discussing potential contenders. You might want to talk about Medina Spirit's name. Came up pretty quick in the conversation. What is it you like about this horse?
You know, I've just been a fan of his from kind of day one. First of all, I'm a big underdog rooter, right? Like when everyone loved American Pharaoh, I was like, boo, Pharaoh. And I rooted on Dortmund every time. Like at one point, Bob looked at me and was like, there's something wrong with you. And I'm like, Dortmund's going to win again, right? Like, so Medina Spirit is my Dortmund. Last year, actually, everyone else loved Nadal, and then they loved Charlatan. Not me. You know who I loved? Authentic. And you know what happened with that? Won the Kentucky Derby and the Breeders' Cup Classic. Now there's an asterisk because Charlatan and Nadal didn't run in those. But you know what? He still did it, all right? And at the time, no one else liked Authentic. I was the only loony. So this year.
Are you saying, do you see that kind of potential in Medina Spirit for real?
Honestly, probably not. I'm going to say no. Like what I liked about Authentic is everyone liked those other 2 horses. I felt like they were so much more polished, but I felt like they had reached kind of like the top of what they could do. And with Authentic, I just saw raw talent, and I just watched him all year just develop and develop and develop. Like if the Derby had been run in May, he probably would not have won. The way the Derby was run last year, you could, if you go back, I have like bullet drills that are like side by side by side of him, like all year long. The development physically and mentally for him was insane. Medina Spirit, I feel like I don't see like he has like that much more room to grow, to be honest with you. But I love a horse with some fight and some heart, and that's this guy.
Bob Baffert has described him as an overachiever, which, is a compliment, albeit maybe a little bit of a backhanded one. When I heard him speaking about Medina Spirit in those terms, it made me wonder how much more scope there really was for him to improve, especially coming off a race, which, while it was not a bad race at all in the Santa Anita Derby, it also wasn't a race that made me think, oh yeah, that Medina Spirit's going to reverse form with the winner next time. I just wasn't sure what we're looking at in terms of his overall developmental pattern. Have we seen the best of him, or can he keep getting better? What do you think?
I don't want to say that we've seen the best of him, but I think that now we know like how he is best. So like he was a $35,000 OBS purchase, right? He's not the Bob Baffert prototype of what you want to see. Even going back to like his workouts when he first debuted, I just remember him because we were shooting works for XP, obviously, and I had watched a lot of his works, and like his works were very un-Bob Baffert-like, okay? He wasn't working in 47 and change or 59 and change, even a minute flat. He was working like 101s, which is not Bob at all.
Slow for him.
Right. So I'm watching this horse, though. When you watch the way he did it, he was just he was galloping. He wasn't even trying. I'm like, oh no, this horse could have easily gone 59 or 58 and change even if they had even let him run 1 iota. He's 17 wide around the turn and he's in gallop position. So I was waiting for him to debut. He finally debuted and I was super pleased with the results, obviously. I felt like when we saw from him in the Sham and in the Bob Lewis Stakes, were different rides than we got in the San Felipe and the Santa Anita Derby. Okay. So in the Sham, he was never restrained, right? Like he was at the rail, he broke, he was super sharp. And then he was kind of ridden from like the 3/8 pole on. Life is Good was in that race, obviously. He was pretty far in front, but he had started to drift. Well, when they came down like towards the line, I felt like if Cedillo had stayed inside, he could have maybe beat Life is Good that day. Not because he was necessarily better, but he was just more polished than Life is Good was, because he was a little green and erratic. But he didn't, and he played the teammate game, and he stayed on the outside, so he got beat, right? So they came back into Bob Lewis with no Life is Good in there. He had the rail again. And again, if you watch this race, Abel never takes a hold of him. This horse is like running on loose reins. Like, do you guys watch TikTok? Like, hey, look up, girl, 616. Like those where people are like this and their reins are loose. He was totally doing that. This horse turns for home. He's got like a horse on each side. I mean, all around. He's on the inside. There's a horse here. There's a horse here. He gets passed. He comes back fighting because he's got heart. What he does not have is a turn of foot. But again, I think it's that, let me just break. I'm going to get where I want to go, and I'm just going to drop the reins and let him do his job. And the horse will fight for you because he's got good heart. Now he comes back in the San Felipe. He breaks out of the gate, right? And Life is Good goes, and Johnny V's on him now. And he takes a hold of this horse, right? I was like, what are you doing? Going down the backside, his mouth is like he was aching to just get some freedom to be able to run. Again, coming down the lane, Life is Good way the best. Dream Shake actually passes Medina Spirit, and Medina Spirit re-rallies and comes back to get second. This is showing me, again, how much heart this horse has, but he was not allowed to run his race.
Yeah. They weren't trying to win. They were happy with second there to get their Derby points. And I'm not saying it in a critical way. Maybe they thought it would be a bad experience if they really tried the winner, but like they were doing everything they could to keep him out of a tussle with the big horse there.
Exactly. They didn't want to duel them out together, right? So then you come to Santa Ana Derby, and again, they opt to sit off. So Rock Your World's out there setting the tempo. And by the way, he looks amazing. He's striding out beautifully, but when you go up by yourself and there's no one around you, you can finish races. Again, this horse, and he shows heart to run a good second again, but he just doesn't have that turn of foot. What I'm hoping for in the Kentucky Derby is that whoever rides him, I guess it's going to be Johnny V. I honestly wouldn't mind if it was Abel Cedillo again, because I think he just gets his horse, but whatever, Johnny V's in there. I get the fact that Bob had said we want to teach him to relax. Now that Bob has no other horses in the race, and he doesn't have to worry about his other horse being faster, two horses duking it out, please,
dear racing gods, please let this happen.
There's a horse to break, and I want to see floppy reins, and I want to see him do whatever he wants. You know what? If there's horses that are faster than him naturally, I think he's okay with that. I don't want to see you go, oh, let's just bring you back here and rate you. Horses that are one pace don't rate because they don't have another gear to give you. Like if you choke them down, they're like, well, this is all I'm going to give you then. And that is Medina Spirit. He needs to break. He needs to not be sent, but just let him do his job. This horse will take you to good places if he is allowed to do that. I am really convinced. Is he dynamic? No. Is he unbeatable? Absolutely not. Does he have a lot of heart? Sure. I mean, Bob compared him to Silver Charm. I think that's a pretty lofty compliment for this horse. He just needs to be allowed to do his job. No more messing around. Stop choking him back. Stop making him rate. Just let him do his job.
Medina Spirit. Maybe the recipe is just gallop around there. Just let him run. And Michelle, I have to say, I did enjoy the first ever ASMR on the In the Money Media Network with you getting all close up to the microphone like that. I was feeling very relaxed as you did that. It was good.
I can do that for you anytime you need, Peter. Let me review works for you like this.
It's amazing. It's amazingly good stuff. Let's talk about betting this year's Kentucky Derby. You mentioned Rock Your World. I sense you might still have a little bit of a thing for him. We'll have you on our Final Answer show next week, coming to you live on the In the Money Media Network, and of course that'll appear video on demand and podcast form as well, where we'll really hold your feet to the fire about your opinion. But this far out, what are you thinking about betting in this year's race? And will those two horses be in your reckoning?
I made a flow chart.
That's amazing. You
Okay.
gotta tweet that.
I made this actually because I do like a show for my racehorse called Stop and Smell My Roses, where I like recap the Derby preps in like brutal honesty from the week before. Okay. So I made this flowchart to try and help myself figure out how to find a Derby winner. I was like, I told you I'm like anti-favorite, right? Like I'm always like, check them out, like Dortmund versus American Pharaoh. So like this year, instantly I'm like, essential qualities, garbage, throw them out. Like I don't want to play him. Then I had Jimmy Bell of the owner's box.
Oh, that was a great episode, by the way.
Okay, he totally convinced me that I should like essential quality. And then I did this flow chart. And essential quality is like the unbeatable here. I didn't love his last work. And then I went and watched the like jockey cam of it. And I'm like, I like it better. He's just lazy, this horse. He doesn't like to do too much work than he's supposed to do. So I'm going to play him. I'm definitely going to use Rock Your World. Although if you can get him at a good price, I think that's great. I feel like at this point, there's so many like wise guys onto this horse that it's going to be crazy. But I love this horse's running style. Like he can be on the lead. He can be right behind. He's just got a beautiful stride. Yeah. I mean, now to be fair, I don't know if he's like jammed up behind horses, how that's going to work out. Right. Like
probably not well.
Yeah. If he's in like the 16 hole and like, I mean, that could be bad, but as long as he can free run, he just has a long, beautiful stride. There might be some like negative karma in the air around that horse right now, but I think I'm going to definitely use him. And I'm going to use Medina Spirit. I think Medina Spirit is going to run 1, 2, 3, 4, somewhere. He's not going to win. Let's be silly. Okay. He's not going to win. He's going to run 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. I would be super convinced about that. And the other horses I'm really interested in are Known Agenda and Soup and Sandwich. I'm not going to use Highly Motivated at this point unless I see something from him more that I really like, because I feel like some of the Chad Brown dirt horses are, gosh, I don't want to say one-hit wonders, but there's a serious art in like our derby preps and like our dirt races to like get a horse to peak. And like Bob Baffert's got that under control, right? You can really watch his horses week by week by week getting ready for like, I mean, you can see the crescendo for them to have this like huge peak. And I feel like grass racing, which Chad Brown excels in, is a little different, where it's like, this is the race and you just kind of like maintain. And then like 2 weeks before you like make them good for that race, because they only run this far. And dirt racing is different. So I'm just not entirely convinced about Highly Motivated. So at this point, I'm checking him out. So it's Essential Quality, Known Agenda, Medina Spirit, Rock Your World, and maybe Soup and Sandwich with the worst name ever. Like that name will never win the Kentucky Derby, but I like how that horse is like super feisty and he's a fighter.
Oh, great stuff, Michelle.
Too much to use like this is like the first go.
Yeah, this is the original short list. We'll be narrowing down. We'll have you back on to talk about, how your opinion evolves. And when you get ready to record that, those relaxation tapes, that could be the first foray into that type of audio publishing for In the Money Media. You and I'll talk about that offline.
I have to say, you have to watch the work for Medina Spirit on April 16th. You can watch that on XBTV. Here I am typing it in, xbtv.com.
You're murdering me here, Michelle. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Cut that out.
I'm leaving it in. Absolutely. Right down to the finger tapping, which I won't try to imitate. But we're going to talk to you again next week. Can't wait to see you in Lexington.
All right. Thanks, Pete. Can't wait to see you there.
All right, now I am joined by my friend, the director of Bloodstock at WinStar, Liam O'Rourke. We're going to have him talk about Sainthood, who is owned by WinStar. So we're going to put him on the spot here to let us know what he thinks. Liam, what's going on?
Not much, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Good.
I ready to get back to the Bluegrass State. Got a little time there and ready to head back.
Absolutely. It was good running into you there opening weekend at Keeneland, and look forward to seeing you guys back here, you and Pete back here.
So tell us a little bit about Sainthood. Where, how, when, obviously you guys have a big operation with all the stallions there. You have a lot of homebreds. A lot of the horses you're involved with are homebreds or at least by stallions that you guys stand. How did Sainthood come to wear the white with the green and black star?
Yeah, that's a great question. We our team, we shop most of the sales pretty hard, both the yearling and the 2-year-old scene. We spent a lot of time down in Ocala, kind of late winter through the spring, trying to find the next stable stars, so to speak. Last year was a little bit of a fun year, as everybody knows, with COVID and some different things getting rescheduled. We lost the Keeneland meet, we rescheduled the Derby, and we also lost the Keeneland Spring Sale, the April sale, or excuse me, the April sale, which is that's 1,200 2-year-olds cataloged in that sale. It's a major source of high quality runners. So when that occurred, our team kind of stayed down there a little bit and increased our farm visits, and we found Sainthood on a farm down there and purchased them privately. So a little bit different, a little bit of a departure from our usual method, but we had to get creative given we were living in COVID times last spring.
Now, he didn't make his debut until January. Leading up to that point, what did Todd kind of tell you guys, hey, we have a runner here, or did he kind of jump up and surprise you in his first couple starts, or what were your expectations from Sainthood when he debuted back in January?
Yeah, everything that we had seen after we got him back from Ocala. He went over to Rudy for a little bit. Then he came back to the farm and went back with Todd in October. And all the reports were fairly positive. He appeared to be a talented horse, good moving horse, was a good looking horse. So, it's just, a timing issue, getting him fit, getting him ready, and let Todd, kind of pick the spot where we thought he would be able to make a strong debut.
What was the logic behind, not the logic, because that sounds like that wasn't a smart move. It was. I think he was probably best that day. But what was the decision in sending him to Turfway to run on the synthetic?
Yeah, just thought it was it would be a good spot for him. I think the synthetic M. Schwish himself. He performed on both surfaces. Lemon Drop Kid, the Sainthood's broodmare sire. Likewise, they act on both surfaces, and sometimes that's the recipe for a horse that's going to perform on the synthetic, as well. The distance, we've got there's some stamina in his pedigree as well. So we thought, it was a good move to put him into the 9 furlong race there.
Now, what was the conversation? I've learned as I've got to know people in positions like yours that there's always some kind of behind the scenes info when it comes to the riders and the trainers of what the conversation was after the race. I mean, like I said, I thought Sainthood was best. I thought he was interfered with, and it did cost him the race. When the rider jumped off, what did he tell Todd? What did Todd tell you guys in terms of that performance and what happened within that race?
Well, I think I won't comment on the lack of the lane that he was pursuing, but I think overall the way he re-engaged was the biggest takeaway. A lot of young horses in their third lifetime starts, or even older seasoned horses, when you get shut off like that and you basically have to stop, they don't restart. And we showed a lot of fortitude in re-engaging. And he was the best moving horse in last 70 yards of that race. So to re-engage, I think, was the takeaway. And we know that he wants to be a runner and he wants to compete, and those are very important things at this time of year.
What are your things you're excited about, things you're concerned about come Saturday? What are you do you want to draw outside, inside? Are you hoping the pace materializes? Are you hoping that he could take advantage being forward? Are you worried about the distance, not switching back to the dirt? What are your thoughts for the first Saturday in May?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. I think he's coming off of a nice little layoff. He had a really good work Friday, the 17th. Worked with known agenda. I thought that they were pretty close in their work. Scheduled to work again this Saturday. That'll be his final prep. I think he kind of has the tactical speed. He's shown he can get out of the gate, especially from an outside post in those earlier races. He was able to get to the front. He popped out of the gate pretty good in a Turfway and was able to settle. So I think he's kind of, you can do a couple different things with him. we'll see where the draw places him. We know we won't be the speed. I think with Caddo River coming in now, I mean, I'd say he should be likely to be out front, but we'll see what how the draw turns out. But just excited, just excited to get him there, and looking forward to the day. And I think it's a fairly wide open Kentucky Derby this year.
I'm going to put you on the spot. I didn't even prep you for this, so I'll ask the question really long so you can think about it. As far as the undercard is concerned, whether it be on Friday or on Saturday, is there anyone we're excited about for WinStar that's going to be running that we might expect a good performance out of?
Yeah, I'm actually glad you asked me that. We have obviously the entries haven't been taken yet, but we have a horse called Prime Factor, who is likely to run on the Derby undercard, just running in his condition. He is a horse that we've had high hopes for. We paid quite a bit of money for him as a yearling. He was a top horse in our barn. All through 2-year-old year, had a couple little hiccups, but we have high hopes for him. He's going to return in a 1-turn race. That's the plan. And his breeze on Friday morning when we were down there was exceptional. He'd be a horse that I'll certainly have a few dollars on, albeit I'm sure it'll be 10:30 or 11 in the morning when he's running. So, we're pretty excited about him.
That's all right. There's nothing wrong with getting your Derby day started off early. If you can have a beer at 10:30 in the morning on Derby day, you can have a wager at 10:30.
Right. Get the bankroll going. Right. Get a base going.
Liam, I appreciate you taking the time. Good luck. We'll see you in Kentucky.
Absolutely, man. Thanks a lot for having me, and good luck to you, and good luck to all your listeners out there.
Next up on the show, we have the editor of In the Money Plus, Tyler Whisman, to talk about Get Her Number. Tyler, how are things?
Doing well, Pete. Good to be here today.
Now, I'm looking at your background, and I'm wondering, did you win some Eclipse Award that you forgot to put on your resume? Like, what is that back there behind you?
No, I wish. Maybe that's in the future. Who knows? But that is whatever wedding anniversary it is. That is the bronze statue I think that my wife got me. So
very cool. The bronze horse statue, very cool in the background. I'm experiencing statue envy. I kind of want one, but I will settle for the podcast award that we have back behind me there. But we'll get the bronze one someday. I want to talk to you about this horse, Get Her Number, who I know you can make at least a little bit of a case for. Wasn't exactly on my radar coming out of the Arkansas Derby. What do you see when you look over the PPs of this son of Dialed In?
Well, I think if you take the name off of the past performances and you look at a turf sprint followed by a turf route followed by a Grade 1 victory, looks an awful lot like another horse that'll probably be around 5-1, which is Rock Your World. But that's really the same credentials that Get Your Number had as a 2-year-old. Definitely an interesting start to this horse's career. I think if you look back at that first race, a turf sprint, he beat Hot Rod Charlie as well. And I think that if you look at the 3-year-old races, there is a lot to be desired relative to some of the other competitors. But I think in both cases, the horse comes off of a little bit of a trip. So bumped pretty significantly in the first start or the first turn of the Rebel. Wide around both turns, same exact thing, very wide trip in the Arkansas Derby. And so if you look at some figures like Thoroughgraph, I mean, the horse isn't really that far off. It fits actually quite well with Medina Spirit and really isn't that far off with another horse, again, coming back to Rock Your World. So I could make a case, I think, for this horse to hit the board. The connections have certainly won a lot of big races, not necessarily, always in Kentucky. I also don't think that Peter Miller comes to mind in terms of getting dirt routers. From my recollection, he's had 2 starters and has had the privilege of both of them finishing last. I would take this horse to not finish last. I think this horse actually has a little bit of finish in it. I don't love the pedigree at the Derby trip, and definitely with there are some others that I like more. But like I said, if I'm going to use any horse out of the Arkansas Derby to get in the money to some degree, I think it would be this horse.
Are you damning with faint praise saying the horse isn't going to finish last, or do you think that there's a realistic on the board chance, or just more of a leave in on your widest of spreads?
I think that there's a little bit to be determined. When we're recording this, the jockey still hasn't been named, right? So Pratt rode him the first in his 2-year-old starts. I think Castellano was on the horse, and then Arrieta in the Arkansas Derby. So, it might depend a little bit as to who the jockey is and how this horse figures to get from the kind of ride the horse figures to get from a trip perspective. But I can see this horse, finishing third or fourth is probably the highest. And, certainly at 40 or 50 to 1, which is what I imagine this horse would have to be. I could see trying to include if I'm playing a superfecta or even the bottom rung of a trifecta.
40 to 1 internationally right now is Get Her Number. I can't remember if when we did the Derby draft. Yeah, we have a little interstitial for Get Her Number. You can see the stats right there. You mentioned about the jockey. That's the last out jockey listed. I mean, you make a compelling case. I mean, it wouldn't be the kind of thing where I had an all. From my point of view, it wouldn't be the kind of thing where I had an all, and even though it was an all, I left the horse out. I'm convinced to that degree. While we have you, Tyler, I do want to talk to you quickly about what's going on with In the Money Plus for the Kentucky Derby. Folks who sign up now will be able to get the service all the way through the second leg of the Triple Crown, the Preakness as well. What can folks expect on there?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of things planned. And as we've stated all along the way in the build up to the Kentucky Derby, it's a little bit of the true to ITM form production meeting in the middle of the show. But I think we do have some things that are kind of hammered out at this point, right? I think we have, a couple of podcasts where we'll focus on some of the early pick fives, either Oaks or Derby Day, as well as perhaps the $2 2-day pick six, where we'll try to cover that. Certainly we'll have kind of the ITM family do a pick style grid that we did similar to our Breeders' Cup premium package. So that'll be some of it. We would like to do an Ask Me Anything where we will solicit from our ITM Plus subscribers a list of questions early next week. And then I will, harass you and JK to get some answers, either audio version or written versions, that we'll see what we can come up with there. I'm going to be trying to cover a wagering strategy for a couple of different price points. I think that our ITM Plus subscribers have given the feedback that they love the picks, the analysis that is given on both the regular shows as well as the ITM Plus shows. But they're really struggling still with, okay, how do I translate these opinions if theirs happens to align with those of the hosts and the guests? How do I translate that into ticket construction? So we hope to take a little bit of a deeper dive into that. So that's just a few of the things. I think we've gone out of our way to try to over deliver to our subscribers, and by all accounts, everyone's happy. And as you mentioned, you get coverage not only through the Derby at this point, but also through the Preakness as well. So take advantage of that offer. And as we've said, it's the best value in racing.
Good stuff, Tyler. Doing a great job over there, and appreciate you coming on here and talking about Get Her Number as well. For much more information, go to inthemoneypodcast.com. And if you want to learn more about Plus, inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
It's not very often that I am joined by a fellow Texan to talk horse racing. Keith Asmussen, what's going on, man?
I'm awesome. Thank you for having me, Jonathon. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's so funny. Like we have very similar, not similar stories, but kind of. I grew up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area going to Lone Star. You grew up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area going to Lone Star, a little bit different, obviously, than my going. You were probably going on the backside. I was going on the front side. Where did you grow up in Dallas? What high school did you go to?
Arlington, Texas. It was right off 360. So not even a 15-minute drive from Lone Star.
No, that's awesome. So I grew up in the Grapevine area. I went to Colleyville Heritage High School. Not that anyone watching cares about that, but thought I'd tell you. And then more importantly, we're both Longhorns, which is a fraternity like no other, right?
Oh, most definitely. That's crazy. You said you went to UT and we met at Saratoga. I was like, I don't know if he's just pulling my leg or what.
Yeah, no, I graduated in 05. In December of 05, right when Vince Young won, and that was back when we were really good at sports. So I feel bad for you because now it's a struggle all the time. But back then we played in any game we thought we were going to win. So maybe sooner than later. Hey man, I wanted to talk a little bit. I think it's pretty cool. Obviously, I think a lot of people during the pandemic kind of saw your story about how when school was paused, you had an opportunity to ride and. You have a history obviously with your father being Steve and being around the track and galloping. Was this something you always knew you were going to do, or did it just kind of fall in your lap when COVID hit and you were like, you know what, I'm going to do this?
It's something I always wanted to do. It's nothing I really knew was going to happen. Given my physique, it was definitely going to be a challenge more towards that end. but I think it kind of did fall in my lap, given that it was COVID hit like right before spring break. They gave us an extra week off of school. And as soon as spring break started, I went to Hot Springs to work for Darren. I galloped for a couple months, and I went to Lone Star. And in the past, I'd only been galloping in the summers. And so it's like summer would end when I'd really feel like I was getting comfortable, getting good. And given that I had this extra amount of time, I was really high on myself and I'd always ask my dad if I could like try, but it always just gets stunted by school, have to go back to school, can't really get started. And it was just like this extended period of time that, I was able to kind of reduce to get where I was like, I could really do this. And then I made the weight. I was really green to start though. And it's funny. I hadn't galloped more than 3 summers, and then going into race riding, there's nothing like it.
Do you think that that stint is over, or do you envision getting a leg up in the future ever again?
I'd love to return to it. I know this summer I won't, but I graduate May 2022. I'd always felt that my riding stint was very silver spoon, and it wasn't really until the last week of Lone Star and the week I rode at Remington where I really felt like I could do it. And so I'd love to revisit it, but I know nothing's certain.
Well, one of the times that it worked out for you was on Superstock, a horse that's going to be running in the Derby. When you got a leg up that day, you crossed the wire in front in that stake at Lone Star, going 5.5. Did you jump off and say, this horse is going to run in the Kentucky Derby?
No, definitely beyond my wildest dreams. No, most definitely. The story behind this horse is insane. My grandfather had bought him with Irv at the Keeneland September sale, and they had planned to sell him in the 2-year-old in training sale at Lone Star. That got canceled because of COVID. Because he was entered into the sale, he's eligible for the fraternity. And it's funny, I worked him out of the gate and I got his OK card. And as a joke, that was like kind of the same time I was planning on starting to ride. I called my grandfather and I'm like, I know what I want for Christmas. And it was to ride him in a race. He ended up running at Keeneland. My father shipped him to Keeneland with another maiden claimer he had from Lone Star because we had like a COVID scare at Lone Star and the track closed for a week. They shipped him there. He spun his wheels on the turf. And then when he came down to run in his maiden, I was very pissed I got him beat in his maiden. And then I couldn't be more high on him in the fraternity. But I always thought he was really athletic. I worked him every time he worked since he'd come into my father's stable. And he's like one of those horses where, you go in, you think you're going slow, you look at your watch and you're going fast, you're going faster than you're supposed to. And I kind of think that's like my tell for horses that are very athletic, do it within themselves and are very fluid.
Were you shocked? Obviously, we all knew about Concert Tour and Caddo River, but were you shocked, or were you optimistic that he would run well in the Arkansas Derby?
I was extremely optimistic. When I quit riding, I went back to school, and then I returned to Louisville for the Derby, and I saw him before the Iroquois, and he looked like a completely different horse. Had really grown, but I saw him before he ran in the Derby. A couple days before I saw him training, I was like, this horse looks completely different every time I see him. So, walking into the paddock, I don't think we could be any more optimistic. If they gave us a shot, I thought we were gonna fire.
If you had it your way, well, what would kind of be the dream scenario for Superstock come the first Saturday in May? Do you think is he trip dependent? Does he like being inside, outside? Does he need a lot of pace to close into? Does the distance seem like it's going to be an issue for you? And obviously, your dad's a Hall of Famer, and him running in the race is evidence enough that he feels like he fits. But what are your personal thoughts about how you'd like to see the race unfold?
Right. I would definitely hope, and I do think it's the case, that there's plenty of pace. I would like him, or it doesn't matter what I'd like, but I would think that I think there's enough pace and him coming from off of it. I don't think he's really trip dependent. I like 1.25 miles, but I'm obviously very biased. I thought he ran through the wire in the Arkansas Derby.
how much of an impact, like on your, as you as a rider, has Ricardo been? Obviously, Ricardo rides basically first call for your dad, and spending a lot of time with him. I always see when you're around, I see you and your brother always talking to Ricardo, and how instrumental was he in kind of giving you the confidence to take this little journey that you took this year?
Yeah, no, I talk to him every other day, and he'd always be watching my replays, let me know what I should do and fix. Same with my grandfather, my uncle, my dad. You know, there's a lot of self-reflection watching replays and them giving me pointers.
Well, man, I appreciate it. I know you got a lot of studying to do, I'm sure. But good luck with Superstock. I know you'll be rooting, and we got to hang out sometime, man. We got to, you know, we're two Longhorns stuck in this city that doesn't have a lot of racing going on. We can at least go grab some wings and beers if you're old enough, for crying out loud.
I am, and I'd love to. That's very funny. Not very many horse players in Austin.
Not at all. Well, good luck, man. We'll see you. Hook 'em horns.
Hook 'em. Thank you.
If you're enjoying this video, I'm going to take a wild guess that you're going to enjoy a lot of what we have going on at the In the Money Media Network. Lots of great horse racing content daily. Best way to keep up with it is through our absolutely free newsletter. Sign up inthemoneypodcast.com/email. And then if you're really into this stuff and you want all the content you can get, including a lot more actionable betting info, you're going to want to subscribe to our Plus service. Very reasonably priced. Check out all the details on that. inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. You get digests of all the shows, so you don't have to write down the picks as we're giving them week in, week out. They'll come to you in a separate email. Extra shows, extra great written content as well. Check it out. inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. Next up in the show, very happy to welcome in another one of the professional horse players that I feel extremely fortunate that we have in our extended circle on In the Money podcasts and throughout. And I'm somebody I'm very happy to also be able to call a friend. Professional horse player Paul Matties, NHC champion Paul Matties, horse player advocate Paul Matties. So many ways I can introduce this guy. What's up, Paul?
Great to see you, Pete. How's everything?
Things are good, man. Getting very excited for this year's Derby. Going to be flying out in a few days and looking to get all these Monster Pod interviews up so folks can start their Derby prep early. And the horse you want to talk about, this is kind of funny. You were one of the first people I reached out to and said, hey, do you have a horse that you might want to talk about that might be a little bit under the radar? I don't know how I phrased it, something along those lines. And so before this horse became seemingly everybody's buzz horse, you had mentioned to me you were interested in Mandolin. Why is that? What about Mandolin attracted you in the first order?
Yeah, I was really tricky on that one, huh? We tried to come up with the tricky one and that everybody loves. But you know, the one thing about this Derby is there's a lot of horses that have had good setups, and you know, horses that most horse players would want to bet against. Which is, I think, is a good sign for bettors, you know, because there's a lot of horses you can be against, you know. I mean, but we'll get into that some other day. But well, Mandolin was just, to me, the horse that was really interesting because his race in the Risen Star, he ran fast enough to win the Derby already, and there's not many other horses in the race that had. So something like that, you know, my radar's up, and I'm trying to find an excuse why he ran so bad last time, you know. I even went back to the origins of his name. Did you know that Mandolin is a window in Arabic? It's a tall vertical window. I had no idea.
I did not know that.
I figured that most people think it's the Mandolin Rain, you know, like that 80s song. If Mandolin was in our barn, in my brother's barn, it would be sung Mandolin Rain probably all day long.
We appreciate all the music heads. That's, you know, there's these weird connections we have in horse racing with other things in my life, music being one, as you can see from all the records behind me. And then of course, professional wrestling being the other one. We've got a lot of music maniacs and wrestling maniacs, but no, in fact, it has to do with, it's a window. I don't know. Is it like a window that might be found in a mosque? I don't know.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. So anyway,
when you look back at that race, you said you were looking back, you were trying to find the excuse and trying to give yourself a reason to key off the race that made him look like he'd be fast enough. What did you find in terms of an excuse?
Well, not as much as I'd hoped, you know, but he did I did think that he was keyed up too much in the race last time. The blinkers worked when they put him on, and I think Florent and probably the whole crew got a little confused about what the style of the horse, what he wanted to run like. And I'm hoping they figured it out now, that the idea is to go back with this horse, even though he's putting blinkers on. And he's almost going to be forced to in this race, which is a good thing. And I like closers who work fast. And obviously there's no horse that's worked better. I don't know how in detail everybody's paid attention, but if you have, go back and look at his workouts. Since he's gotten to Churchill, he's been with nothing but he's probably the best at any horse that's worked. His workout on April 10th, he worked with Bonnie South and pretty much toyed with her. And then Bonnie South came back and won the race at Keeneland this weekend. So that would be a real good sign that how good he's doing. And then his last workout was even better by all accounts. And I did see it just once, but it looked real good. I was going to watch it again later, but so he's coming into the race perfectly. But back to his race in the Louisiana Derby, like he was like worried about position in the first turn. And I think that when he made that 5 wide move in the first turn, Florent got a little confused about what he wanted to do. And he kind of lost control of him. It wasn't a relaxed stalking move like it was in the race before it, so he was 5 wide in the first turn, and then he was forced into when the race went fast, because it's a weird pace. It was a 1 mile and 3/16 race, which is really weird at fairgrounds. And a lot of times in races like that with long straightaways, the first quarter is fast, but it's not a real fast pace because everybody gets relaxed and get in position. And that's a thing that's lacking in route racing and in the United States dirt racing nowadays. You only see it in these big races because we don't run 1 mile and quarters and these long runs to the first turn. You can have the pace should be fast early, but then it can really level out. I mean, give an example like Justify when he won the Derby. It was a very fast quarter, but then it was from that point on very linear. Nothing quickened up from that point on at all. And the fairgrounds race was kind of like that. It was a little fast early, and then it leveled up. And then when the running was going, when they hit the far turn, he had used a little too much, and then he had to go full tilt in the turn wide again. So that's less than ideal, setup. And he didn't finish good, and he got beat up way more than what you would like to see. That would be the negative. But it was a bad trip in the sense that the dynamics just didn't work in his favor. I would have liked to seen him run much better, obviously, but maybe it'd be a little bit longer odds too because of the way he finished.
Well, let's talk about the odds a little bit. So this is a horse I flashed up our little interstitial that we have here on him. This was from a week ago. I tracked the international price on him at 40-1. Looking again overseas, he's into 25-1. But between the various people I've heard tout this horse from different camps, horse players have different schools. You have people who, especially for the Derby, you have people who focus on workouts. You have people who are looking at patterns and speed figure patterns and things like that. It feels like this horse has caught the attention of people in many different camps. What do you think the main reason is he's picked up so much steam as a Wise Guy horse?
Well, you just nailed that a little bit. There's two things that really take steam in racing, and one is kind of a little bit past, but it won't in the Derby. And it's the idea of the speed figure guys, particularly Sheets, of bouncing. So this is a perfect candidate of a horse who will anybody who's looking at a performance figures sheet type way will look at his last round race as a complete bounce and will look for it to go forward, especially with the pattern that he was going on. It'll be right up their alley, and he's almost fast enough as it is before the bounce, and he gives you the appearance on a sheet that if he comes back, he'll go further. He'll go forward. So anybody who's looking at it in that perspective, and in the Derby, they still have a big, following, and they dictate a lot of the odds somewhat, because even though it's not like on a regular day basis, kind of the computer guys have taken over the everyday basing on the odds and on just a race day-to-day racing. But on the Derby, I think you're going to see a lot of sheet players, or thoroughgraph, or of those natures are going to like this horse because of the bounce. In my own personal opinion, when people ask about the bounce, I have a weird thing. I believe in the bounce, but I believe in it in such a less degree than what they look at it every single race almost. Somebody could bounce in it and that sort of thing. I believe in it. I've seen it with some of my horses and being around barns and other people in the barn where the horses will react to a race, and you can actually see it in the demeanor of the horse. But again, I think it happens. There's usually a different reason why the horse ran bad, and they just chalk it up to being the bounce all the time, But there is substance in the idea of the bounce, and this is a type of horse that if you believe in it at all, you're going to like him. And then with the workouts, if we have seen anything in the last few years, and I say what you would see this probably in racing in general, because the horses don't run as often, workouts have become way more important. It's like looking at the last race, and that's why we have all these workout reports now, and that's why all the the clockers are these private clockers, and people are just more than normal people going out to see horses work out in the morning. And that's why we have it on video, because it's so important now. You don't know. The last race is probably not the biggest factor where it always was, especially when you're running 6 weeks, 5-6 weeks in between races. It's the last race may not mean all that much, 5 weeks ago, So obviously the workout that's 14 days out where the horse was full tilt is very important. So, and he couldn't be doing better, obviously, with these workouts. So, he's going to get a lot of steam from then. So the combination of the two, I think that 40-1 is a total dream. I hope you got down on the 40-1.
No, I didn't take 40. I'm starting to think that the 25 might be worth taking, though.
Yeah, if you could get 25, because I think he'll be less than that on race day.
If you had to guess, put your feet to the fire about what price he'll be, what would you make the over-under?
12, 14, somewhere in there, teens.
Gotcha.
I don't know how much they're going to go for Essential Quality. Essential
Great
Quality
question.
has the form of a horse that should be odds-on almost, but we're not talking about him as if,
Right.
I mean, he's got form like Seattle Slew.
Right.
But
the figures are so, you make your own figures. Does he look as ordinary on your figures as he does on the
last
Buyers?
race was really, his last race was the fastest figure that anybody's run. But I would say that he did it under ideal circumstances. He stalked a slow pace. He was in the right part of the track. And I don't particularly love the way he finished up, though I don't think he's, going to stop to a walk or anything. He does remind me of Nyquist quite a bit. And Nyquist was a horse who didn't get a lot of talk, but when the betting came, he got bet out like you would expect maybe a horse with that form, a horse with a lot of ones and the Breeders' Cup winner. I think Nyquist is, I could be wrong, but he might be the lowest priced Derby winner in quite a while. He was lower than California Chrome, I think, and he was lower than American Pharaoh. It was a little surprising how much money he bet. So I wouldn't be surprised if Essential Quality does the same thing.
That's interesting. 230-1 for Nyquist. And that's a really, really good point. I know you had some general thoughts about when a trainer has multiple runners in a race like this. Brad Cox with Essential Quality, with Mandolin, maybe with Caddo River, though it sounds like that's on the fence. We are going to cover him in the Monster Pod just in case they decide to go. But what, if anything, does that change about the way you look at the race?
Well, in this sense, it's very positive. I mean, if Billy Turner had another horse that he ran when Seattle Slew was running, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to run this horse too in the Derby." You know, it would have been a little interesting. I guess Angle Light ran with Secretariat, but I still think it's pretty interesting that I know it's Juddmonte Farm, so it's not like this is not a group of people that were like the Derby is everything. You know, it's not like he's getting pressure. You know, there's a lot of groups where they're running just because it's the Derby, and some of these trainers like that have multiple horses like Pletcher and Brad Cox, or even Baffert, they have to run other horses sometimes when they don't. I think that the horse that won the Wood Memorial, I don't think Todd wanted to run him in that race, but they made him run in the race. You know, that sort of thing happens, but it doesn't happen with Juddmonte.
Right.
You know,
right.
They're not running just to run. They don't.
The owner isn't picking the spot when it comes to Juddmonte.
No, and it's not because he's got some big thing. He's won every race in the world, and the idea is not. You know, I know the owner just passed, but the whole group there, they've won every race. They've had the best horses that's ever lived. They've had a couple. They're not chasing this Derby like it's you know, like it's all or nothing. So, and then you got the fact that Godolphin owns the other one, right? So I'm not sure what the idea was. Maybe there'd be a little bit of one-upmanship if they beat Godolphin in the Derby, maybe. But again, I don't think they want to do it to be embarrassed. They're doing it because, you know, they think they can win, and the horse must be doing really good. So I think it's a good sign, you know. Unlike Angle Light, we you know, we don't have uncoupled entries anymore. So, you know, you will be able to bet this one, you know, whereas Secretary, you know, very it's kind of like famously known, he was 1A, I guess, in that race.
Yeah.
Mandolin will not be 1A in the Derby.
We're going to have you back, Paul, as part of our Pro Players Roundtable. That's going to be free. We'll drop that on the eve of the Derby. You, me, Sean Borman, we'll have our conversation where we go way into depth. But just a very quick thought from you. I'm curious now as we've gotten closer. Is Mandolin a horse you could see keying around? What is your short list this far out for the Derby? Understanding that opinion may change, and we'll be talking about it again much closer to.
Right now, I only have a few horses that I think that can win, actually. You know, that's an odd thing for the Derby, but that's usually a good sign because when I get it narrowed down earlier, that's been my best results in the Derby. So, you know, obviously the favorite definitely can win. He's never lost, and like I said, he's got the highest figure. You know, Known Agenda seems to be the horse that is the most likely, like old-fashioned route horse. You know, there's things about him I don't like, but there's things about him that I do like. And I don't know what kind of odds he's going to be either, because I think he's actually going to get bet more than what people. I know he's not getting a lot of press or anything yet, but I think his form, you know, indicates that he'll get bet more than than maybe what's been, you know, the morning lines I've seen at least. And I mean, I guess the horse that ran second to Essential Quality ran pretty well. He's not my type of horse where I would key him because there's no way he's getting the lead like he did in the other race. Not that he needs it, but he got a pretty soft pace, and he still got beat by Essential Quality. So, you know, I mean, maybe if you know, with the way the track came up and it seemed like he was going to get in a good spot or something like that, I could see myself change my name. But a lot of these horses don't look fast enough actually to win. You know, that's one of the things I was drawn to with Mandolin was that race at Fairgrounds. I've scrutinized it up and down, and I didn't even really believe that it was that fast. And the horses haven't run great out of it, but I think it's circumstantial. These Fairground shippers have done good everywhere. So I was worried that my Fairgrounds figures were too high, and if anything, I think they're a little too low.
Interesting.
And so I think that it's legit. You know, I mean, it's hard to imagine even the race there at Oaklawn, which had a fast pace. It's hard to imagine any of those horses winning, and especially the Wood Memorial. That didn't seem like a race that you'd want to, you know, maybe the horse who ran second is an interesting horse a little bit, but not to win.
Dynamic one made that move into the hottest part of that race, but yeah, didn't look like Derby form. It didn't come back fast. Just one very quick thought on Rock Your World, since we've gotten a little more comprehensive than we were planning. Curious if you're a believer in him.
No, I'm not. Though I haven't followed Santa Anita as closely as I normally do, and I know my brother Duke has, so I want to talk to him about that day. But from what I can tell. And I haven't had a chance to go back and look at that day enough. But I think speed was good that day. And I think it was unusual that he got the lead. I think he's probably a horse you're supposed to bet against. And I'm just not a believer.
4-1.
And I also don't have that race all that fast, especially for a race in Santa Anita. A lot of those times with the small fields and a speed horse that wins that race will run fast. And I don't have it all that fast. So, he's not getting the lead either in this race. So, you got to envision him being able to get some kind of setup and be able to be faster than these other horses. And at this point, I don't see that at all.
All right. Well, let's put a pin in this conversation, Paul. We'll come back, hopefully, surely you'll have talked to Duke about Rock Your World and all the rest by the time we reconvene next week for the Pro Players Roundtable. Really looking forward to that. Thank you for giving us so much great stuff and your time today.
Yeah, great being here. Take a break. Don't work so hard.
Cheers, my friend.
Yeah, bye.
Coming to join the program now from, I think, Louisville, Kentucky. We'll get that confirmed. It sounds like the Masters, wherever he is. Very bucolic soundscape coming from this next guest. He is the voice of Churchill Downs. He is also a very astute handicapper and horse player. He's my old buddy, Travis Stone. Travis, how are things?
Good. Just so you know, the bird sounds in the background are not like the Masters broadcast. They are authentic. They are real. There's not a cloud in the sky here in Louisville, and Derby season is here.
Very exciting stuff. How many will this be for you now? I've lost count. How many Derbies will you have called after this year?
This will be Derby number 6. First one, American Pharaoh. So yeah, number 6. Hard to believe.
It was an auspicious beginning, and it's been a pleasure listening to you, not just Derby Day, but anytime Churchill Downs is running. How does your skill as a horse player affect your ability as a race caller in general, or are they completely unrelated skill sets?
No, I mean, I think they're actually pretty related. One thing I'd say is that even though I do like to handicap and decipher races, I don't bet on the races that I call purposefully. I was, in fact, sending some buddies last night. This is one Derby Superfecta I'd love to play. Unfortunately, I will not. But the whole essence of handicapping, figuring out race shape and positioning and race flow and where horses are going to be, what they're going to do, that is integral to making a good race call, because you have to be able to figure out, so like at what point of the race is Essential Quality going to make his move, and what can you say about it, right? Or if, for example, Essential Quality breaks last and is dead last early, well, that's totally out of expectation, and you have to be ready for something like that as well. So I think they're very tightly linked, even though I wish I could play that super this year.
We'll come back to that, the super idea at the end. Is it a question of trying to anticipate different narratives that might unfold? Is that part of it? Do you design the race in your head as a caller, almost similar to the way that you do as a horse player?
Yeah, in fact, I'll draw. Everybody knows that I draw silks out when I'm calling races, but then I'll actually draw the silks on a makeshift racetrack at certain points of the race to get them an idea of where horses will be, where the problem or trouble spots are for the race caller, and then also like how could this story unfold from there. So I'm trying to think of an example from this year. I mean, a horse like Hot Rod Charlie, who's got some speed, maybe not all the speed in the race, but has some speed. If he's in front with 5 furlongs to go and is leading the field halfway through the race, what is something that I can say that captures that moment that sounds good? Or if Midnight Bourbon is on the lead with 5 furlongs. So just all these various possible scenarios. Or, when Essential Quality makes his 3-wide move on the far turn, what would capture that moment well? All because of mapping out the way the race is going to shake out on paper.
That's so cool. I love getting that insight from you, Travis. And folks interested in the process of calling the races and specifically the Kentucky Derby, go back in the archive on inthemoneypodcast.com. Find Travis's appearance on JK Plus One. It was stellar stuff. You gave some advice in there about just sort of modulating your voice and public speaking in general that I use to this day, Travis. You got to start in that low register. Bing bong, bing bong.
Bing bong, bing bong.
I think of that all the time.
Yeah.
So good stuff, folks should check out in the archive. You're here today primarily to talk about one contender, as is everybody on the Monster Pod. And Dynamic One was the assignment you got. We're seeing the little slate up there on the YouTube screen now. Tell me your thoughts on this horse. When did Dynamic One come on your radar as a possible Kentucky Derby horse? And what do you think of his chances in this race, Travis?
I mean, look, he's a long shot. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat that. He's going to be double digits, as he should be in this group. But at the same time, this group is very competitive. And even though Essential Quality has done very little wrong and has speed figures that win this race most of the time, it's not like he has an appreciable advantage over several of these. And particularly when you think about horses that are peaking at the right time. I was talking to Nick Zito the other day, and he said so often the Derby is just about the horse that's getting good at the right time. And when you look at Dynamic One's PP profile, he sort of has that theme or that flair. Took him a while to break his maiden, but he broke his maiden in a big way. And he came back and he ran a sneaky good race in the Wood Memorial. I would argue was best in the Wood Memorial. Sort of wide into the first turn, made a good move into the race. Just couldn't hold off a Bourbonic who came with that, final last gasp late lunge. The problem with the Wood, though, is the race came back a little bit on the slow side, but you're going to get 20+1 on this horse. And Todd Pletcher knows how to get horses ready for the Derby. It feels like now's the right time. He's hit his best stride in terms of development, and I don't think he's impossible. He's certainly not impossible to hit the board, and under the right circumstances, he could get the whole thing.
I think you make some great points about this horse. I would agree with your assessment of the Wood all the way around. I did like the fact that it looked to me like he did make his move into the fastest part of the race. It also feels notable that he's had what some have characterized as a positive workout on the grounds at Churchill Downs since. That somehow means more to me for a trainer like Todd Pletcher, who's had success in the race before. Anecdotally, what kind of buzz are you hearing around Dynamic One?
Not much, to be honest with you. It's a little bit on the quiet side. The real buzz horse this year is Mandolin with that big workout the other day. But of course, we're still a little bit early, right? We're still, more than a week or so out. So I think there's plenty of time for the buzz horses to sort of develop. I think Dynamic One, though, is and here's the thing, like from a psychology perspective, Todd Pletcher has several horses in there. And Known Agenda is the Todd Pletcher horse garnering all the attention. And so Dynamic One's a little bit lost in the mix. So I think that's a good thing if you're looking for a price or a bit of a price play. I just think there's far worse long shots you could play in here.
You mentioned the Derby Superfecta. I have to bring it around to that before I let you get out of here. You said that you won't be betting on the race, but if you were, that would be a pool that appeals to you. I have to ask you why and to see if you could give us a glimmer of who some of the runners are you might be including were you to play the bet. And would Dynamic One perhaps be one of those?
Yes, so the way I like to look at superfectas is it's a lot easier to run fourth than it is to run third. It's a lot easier to run third than it is to run second and on up to first. So many people want to build their superfecta tickets from the top to the bottom. They try and find their key horse. Their one horse is going to win the race. And then they build out from there, sort of a triangular approach. I like to take it the other way around and identify horses that I think can outrun their odds. The way races are run, the races are run in a series of moves, and a horse has one move. And once they've made their move, they're toast. Either they're going to finish or they're out of there. And in a race like the Derby, where it's a grueling, intense race over a long distance of ground, the last move is often the best in terms of outrunning your odds. Think of horses like Make Music for Me, or Icebox, or Golden's. I mean, I could go on and on and on about long Commanding Curve. I mean, literally, there's dozens of horses that made their last move in the Derby. And there's a lot of them in this race. So horses like Obazos, Dynamic One, two horses I'm thinking about. I'd even consider a horse like Hidden Stash as a real wild contender to maybe hit fourth. That might be more of a high five contender. And then what you can do on that side of, oops, sorry, I almost dropped my phone. What you can do on that side of things is you can then narrow down on the top side, and you don't have to figure out who's going to win the race. You can use 3 or 4 horses up top. So maybe you use Essential Quality, maybe you use Highly Motivated, maybe you use Rock Your World, who could be of any sort. I'm trying to think. I'd probably put Dynamic One as my one. I mean, Dynamic One runs first in the Derby, and you hit that superfecta, you're probably sitting. You're buying a house by Preakness. So that'd probably be my one toss in at a really big odds. Superstock's another horse that could easily clunk up for 3rd or 4th at decent odds. A horse that's also developing at the right time and will come, for that late run. So that's how I would think about it if I were playing. And I'm telling you, I really wish I could. I love betting in races like this, the superfecta.
Well, it's going to be a very popular pool, no doubt. Do you know, is it back to the $1 minimum this year, or are they keeping the low minimum?
Last I heard, it's going back to $1 minimum, but I don't know if that was 100% final, but I'm pretty sure to be back to the $1 minimum this year.
Okay, we'll double check and we'll send that information out elsewhere on the network. Travis Stone, thank you so much for your time today. Terrific insight about Dynamic One and this year's Kentucky Derby, specifically what it's like to call one. We'll be listening with great interest when you get back behind the mic very soon.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Matty Ice, what's going on?
What's happening, buddy? Looking forward to Derby. It's amazing how quickly time has gone by. It feels like we were just talking about the Breeders' Cup and getting ready for the beginning of the 3-year-old season, and here we are, the big show.
Every time the Derby comes around, I didn't tell you I was going to do this. You're going to be mad at me. Every time the Derby comes around, I think about that scene in Horse Players when you were at the Derby. And look, dude, I've worn a T-shirt to the Derby like 7 times, so I'm not even hating. I'm just saying I always think about the young Matt Bernier thrust into the world.
It's arguably like my most embarrassing thing that I can think of, especially from like a racing standpoint, because I look back on it now and I'm just mortified. I refuse to go back and watch it because I had some crummy like Nike golf polo on, and I just had decent black pants that like I think somebody would wear to an office. Like it wasn't anything fancy, and I had a rain jacket on. Just I can't, like, the camera probably doesn't even do justice to how crummy the outfit was. I gotta keep censoring myself. Disaster.
But my first Derby, I wore a T-shirt from Target. It looked cool. You wouldn't have known it was from Target. It was like when Target tried to like start being kind of like, relevant. Yeah. And I found this like kind of designed like T-shirt with just like colors on it. And so, hey, it happens. Your first Derby. You don't know what to do. I also stayed an extended stay my first Derby for $179
the whole
a week.
Thing was a mess.
Yeah, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. Look, we know the horse you like, and I definitely want to give you an opportunity to talk about that horse at the end. But I think maybe falling in love with that horse and some of the races that he was in, it brought your attention to another one, and that's Midnight Bourbon. What is it about Midnight Bourbon that you like for this Kentucky Derby?
Well, I think, you got a combination of things. I think the ones that are just straightforward, the connections, I understand Steve Asmussen's never won the Derby, but he's won basically everything there is. It's not that he's incapable of winning a race like this. I also like the fact that the horse has never done anything wrong. He's never been out of the money in 7 lifetime starts. I feel like all along as a 2-year-old, when I looked at him, I thought, he's got that sort of profile to me that will project to longer 2-turn races. I could very easily see him being one of the better 3-year-olds come Derby time. And I guess the jury's out. Maybe he's not, the cream of the crop, but he's never really taken a step back. He continues to improve from a speed figure standpoint. If you're somebody that likes the buyers, he's paired up his career best buyers of 96 in each of the past 2. I typically look at that as sort of a potential piece for a forward move coming. And if that gets him up into the high 90, low 100 range, I think he's in with a puncher's chance. I guess you could look at it the other way and say he's given up ground in deep stretch in each of the past 2 runs against horses that he's going to run into again at Churchill in a few days' time now. So, I'm not saying this is a bulletproof sort of situation, but I think there are enough positives, specifically for a horse that's going to be north of 20-1, that if you're looking for an alternative to kind of the obvious logical runners, I think Midnight Bourbon is definitely one to consider.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, every time I think about the Kentucky Derby, I think about that superfecta being that opportunity to life-changing score. And I always think to the fact that, like, there's always one horse in the super that I didn't have anywhere, typically. I was fortunate enough to have Golden Soul and Commanding Curve, but there's even, like, easy ones I didn't have, like Gun Runner, right? I think that what you have to do is find horses that are going to run their race. They're going to finish. And when you look at Midnight Bourbon's past performances, he feels like the type of horse that doesn't matter if he draws inside. I've been asking a lot of the guests, do you care where they draw? I'm not even going to ask you because I know you don't care. It doesn't matter. He just runs. He shows up, he runs. He's probably not going to win, but he can absolutely get a piece.
The way that I've kind of been coining him is he's not sexy, but he is honest. He's just going to show up, give you what he's got. It's not nearly as flashy as a Rock Your World. And he's probably, well, he certainly doesn't have the sort of CV or the credentials coming into this that Essential Quality does. But in a weird way, Midnight Bourbon and Essential Quality, to me, kind of run parallel paths in that they both show up with their run time and time again. One of them, based on speed figures, is really not a lot separating the two, but it's hard for me to sit here and really compare the 2-year-old champion to this horse based on what they've done thus far. But the overall point being, I think you know what you're going to get from him. And to your point, it's probably not good enough to win. I could certainly see it being good enough to run second, third, or fourth, though, especially with the running style that he possesses. I think he's the kind of horse that he's not going to be up there pushing the pace, I don't believe anyway, but I can't imagine him being much farther than 2 to 3 lengths off of it. I think he's going to be in that first flight. And if it really comes down to a stamina test and a war of attrition, I don't really have major concerns with this horse about that sort of thing, where I do some of the other horses and some of the other horses who are going to be much shorter prices.
Yeah, when you talk about stamina test, looking at his last performance in the Louisiana Derby, remember, I think this is the second year now they've done the Louisiana Derby in 1 mile and 3/16. So he's been proven at that distance, running a nice figure that day, but also he was wide all the way around there. So if you want to be cheeky, he basically ran 1.25 miles. He's going to get the distance. He's a Tisnow out of a Malibu Moon mare. You got Steve Asmussen, who does a phenomenal job in the mornings teaching his horses to relax. They don't blaze around there. He's going to be in hand. He's going to finish. I think it's a very interesting horse. And to be fair, I've kind of convinced myself after doing this with you that he's a type of horse I think you want to use in your superfectas and your tries underneath. If you love him, don't let me talk you out of betting him to win. I just think he's got to find quite a bit and get pretty fortunate from a trip standpoint to beat some of these other horses.
Yeah, by no means am I making a case that he is one of the horses that you need to be sort of keying things around on top anyway, or just in general. But I think he is that sort of horse that, let's say you love, let's just use Essential Quality because he is the most likely winner. I think he's going to run his race. Even if he doesn't win, I can't imagine it being out of the top 2 or 3. If you want to key things around him, I think this is the sort of horse that you sprinkle in who's going to be 20, 25 to 1 just simply based on math. There's no way that he can be shorter than that with some of the other horses that are in here, unless he takes some groundswell of support over the next 10 days, which I'd just be very surprised if that happened. I don't think he's a likely winner. I would give him a very, very slight chance, 4 or 5%. That would put him in that 20 to 1-ish range. But I definitely think he's got a chance to hit the board.
And one thing I will say about him as well, I think that helps is I think his style, right? I think we've all learned that being in front at the 8th pole in the Kentucky Derby is a valuable place to be. And his style is going to have him in that mix. Let's see if he can finish it through and hold off some of the big horses, but he definitely makes a lot of sense. I do want to give you the opportunity. Obviously, you're talking about Midnight Bourbon, but in our Derby draft, I was shocked when you picked Mandolin first, and I think you probably could have got him second or third, but I think that illustrates your conviction about how well you think he's going to run. I would be remiss if I didn't get you to talk about him for at least a minute.
Yeah, I mean, look, there is an element of blind faith going into this because the last race in the Louisiana Derby was so bad that he just did no running whatsoever. And typically this isn't a recipe for success leading into the biggest race of a horse's life. But I keep going back to the idea that if this was just a regular race, let's just a Thursday at Belmont Park, and you're going through the PPs and you find a horse who the most recent run, a bit of a dud, didn't really do any running, but the run 2 back is every bit as good, if not better, than the vast majority of the field. And because of that most recent run, the horse is going to be, I'm going to say probably 1.5 times or 2 times greater the price than he would have been had he shown up and come into this in the same sort of form. I think that's what you're looking at with a horse like Mandolin. And you couple that with the connections. I have no concerns about Brad Cox or Florent Giroux on this stage, especially at Churchill Downs. Running style-wise, I mean, I think he's probably my big fear with him. It's not even so much like the Louisiana Derby is certainly its own thing. I wonder if he's a little one-paced, which kind of concerns me a hair. But I think that then goes to the idea of if you put him in a position similar to where a Midnight Bourbon's going to be, I think Mandolin's just a more talented horse. And at that point, I would give him the edge. I think he's going to be able to outfinish a horse like Midnight Bourbon. We saw that 2 starts back in the Risen Star. I just think he's that kind of horse, regardless of what people on Twitter are saying or who they like or whatever the case may be. Don't let the whole wise guy narrative be a reason to talk you off of a horse. If you like him for your reasons, and yes, maybe he's 15-1 instead of 20-1 that you thought you were going to get. If you like him, bet him. And I'm not going to sit here and because all of a sudden he's the steam horse, I'm not going to let that dissuade me. I liked the horse coming out of the Risen Star. I have no idea what the hell happened in the Louisiana Derby. But if he gets back to that Risen Star, I think he has as good a chance, if not better than anyone, to win the Kentucky Derby.
Matty Ice, you playing golf today?
I'm going to try to hit some balls. I got to finish up my pod. I got to send an email to a couple people. So I probably won't be able to play, but I'm going to get out there to the range. We're starting to warm up here in New England now, finally.
Well, hit it straight. I'll see you soon.
You got it.
Next up on the show, very happy to welcome back another face and voice you're going to be seeing as part of the NBC coverage on Oaks and Derby Day. Eddie Olczyk, how are things going, my friend?
Hey, Pete, nice to be with you. Thanks for having me. Everything is going well, and a little bit of normalcy. We're going to have the first Saturday in May, which happens to be May 1st this year, and looking forward to getting down to Louisville for the Oaks and the Derby, as you mentioned, and it's a great time of year for me personally. Pucks and ponies. We're right in the middle of the NHL regular season ending. Usually we're in the playoffs at this time, but that's not going to be starting for a couple of weeks. But it's a great time of year, so thanks for having me, and it's always great to be with you. Really
appreciate you taking time out. It's such a busy time, and racing fans very happy we don't have to lose you to the chaos of the NHL coverage as well. You're here today to talk about a contender who I'm going to wager some of the people listening don't know too much about, and that is Hidden Stash, who I was originally going to go for the gimmick maybe and have you on to talk about Hockey Dad, which I thought would be oddly appropriate. But Hidden Stash is the runner we're here to chat about today. What can you tell us about this horse? And do you think he's got any chance of getting a squeak in a race like the Kentucky Derby?
Yeah, well, you mentioned Hockey Dad when we first talked about this a few days ago, Pete. And I thought, well, maybe you go to the other hockey tie with the ownership group of Known Agenda, obviously Vinny and Teresa Viola, the owners of Known Agenda in the St. Elias stable, but they also own the Florida Panthers in the National Hockey League. We're having an incredible season down there. So, and they're very familiar with winning the Derby as they did with Always Dreaming a couple of years ago. But, you know, when you mentioned Hidden Stash to me, it was interesting because I bet Hidden Stash in the Bluegrass actually. And you didn't know that. I didn't think he got a particularly great ride from Rafael Bejarano. I don't know if he just didn't like the track or he might have just been way too far up the totem pole and maybe he's not this type of horse. But the one thing I will say though, I mean, I really like Vicky Oliver's horses. I just seem to catch her a couple of times over the course of the year and they always seem to pay about $25 or $30. And if Hidden Stash does indeed run and, you know, we'll be up on the board at, you know, at double digits. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I would give Hidden Stash a pass off the Bluegrass. The one encouraging thing is that he is run twice at Churchill Downs and has one win and, you know, 1/3. So I think when you look at that, I think that's certainly an important part of it. Can this horse get the 1.25 miles? I'm not so sure, but we'll, you know, look at, if you like the horse, you're going to get every bit of, you know, value in a race where you're probably going to have a fairly large favorite, in my opinion, in Essential Quality. I'd be interested in what you think, Pete, where he will fall. And then there's probably going to be 3 or 4 that are going to be, you know, lumped into that, probably 4 to 7 or 8 to 1 range. And then you're going to have a bunch of, you know, 20 and higher. So, but like I said, I like Vicky Oliver a lot. I think Hidden Stash certainly has a lot of things going. Can he get in the top 2? I'm not so sure. Can he make the try and make the superfecta? Anything could happen in a horse race, as we know. So I think Hidden Stash might have a little bit of value really underneath if you're really getting deep in the exotics.
I'm thinking essential quality at the top of the market. The more we talk to different people on these shows, I'm feeling the idea of a real similarity to Nyquist without the necessarily large figure edge,
Sure.
but with all the ones to the right of the PPs, 2-year-old champion. And I think the market's going to come for him. And I think that means he's going to be between 2-1 and 5-2. That's just me guessing.
Yeah.
On figures, you can make the case he should be 4-1.
Yeah,
but,
right.
But I think he's going to be shorter than that, and I do think that's going to make the market for a lot of these longer price runners. One thing I wanted to ask you about Hidden Stash before we talk a little bit more generally about the race. What was it that you liked about him coming out of the Tampa Bay race and going into the disappointing Bluegrass?
Well, I just thought that the race, I thought that the race was going to, set up for him with, I thought that, there was enough pace in there to be able to run at, and, a horse that ran well in the Tampa Bay Derby. And I kind of thought that Tampa Bay Derby, for me was an interesting race from the aspect of, the way the track was playing on that day, and the horse made a big move. And I just thought that maybe the horse can run back to that same type of race and be able to pick up the pieces. Right. And so, I mean, look, they pretty much went 1-2 around the track, in the Bluegrass, but it's just one of those days where, maybe the horse just didn't have it, didn't like the track or whatever, but, horse seems to have been doing well since that race. But I just thought maybe could sit the trip. And look, I was looking for value in that race, right? Like I was looking for value over essential quality and Chad's runner as well. So I just think that this is a horse that, if you get 25 or 30-1, which I think probably would be the number, maybe you get lucky and you can find this horse hitting, finishing third or fourth, and all of a sudden a superfecta or a trifecta can, end up being, maybe, 15, 20 times higher because of that last race of coming out with essential quality and highly motivated. So, but that was what I was kind of thinking of in the Bluegrass back on the 3rd of April.
40-1 internationally is Hidden Stash ahead of the Kentucky Derby. Quick word from you, Eddie, before we let you go about the race in general, fully understanding that there's plenty of time between now and then, and we don't even have the draw at this point. And obviously, folks can get your updated opinion watching you on those NBC broadcasts. But from this far out, if I tried to hold your feet to the fire a little bit, what would you give me for the Derby?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in what you think. And I mean, I would agree with you. I think I'm thinking like 3.5-1 on essential quality, because I think a lot of people are going to look at this race and go, wow, I mean, this thing it's got some good depth. I'm not saying it's got great depth. I think it's got some good depth. I think that you can get lots of value if you're looking for the second, third, or fourth choice. My initial read on essential quality is that that race, in my opinion, the Bluegrass, I just wonder, as we saw last year, and I was in front of this. Unfortunately, I didn't play authentic, but I was in front of Tiz the Law, and I just thought that Tiz the Law had left his best race on the track at the Travers, Pete. And he wasn't able to go by authentic, and certainly that was important for the connections, the Travers or whatever. But I thought that race for essential quality, I right now, I think that race took a lot out of him. I'm a little concerned on that. Will I be using him? Yeah, I have to use him because he's 5 for 5 and he's made over $2.2 million. So I'm looking at him and knowing that he's going to be the favorite. I'm probably going to be using him second and third at best. And hopefully, somebody steps up and is able to, split him and the horse that I end up liking. I mean, I mentioned Known Agenda a little bit earlier. I was all over Known Agenda when he ran a pretty average 5th in the Samuel F. Davis back on February the 6th. And he reminds me, that Known Agenda, Pete, he reminds me of Vino Rosso. He really does. Like, he really looks like the type of horse that is a grinder, right? Like, he'll just, the blinkers have gone on, and obviously he's 2 for 2, and Todd certainly knows what he's doing with his 2 Kentucky Derbies. But Known Agenda reminds me a lot of Vino Rosso, just with style and the way that he his big barrel chest, I mean, he lowered it in the Florida Derby, and he just absolutely exploded. So if the Derby was tomorrow, I think I would be both hands in on Known Agenda. But as you mentioned a little bit earlier, we're a ways out, have no idea on post position. We have no idea on what the track condition is going to be. And as I tell people all the time, you just don't know how the track is going to be playing on that particular day. And but if everything's even, I mean, I'm leaning towards Known Agenda to run an absolute huge race. And can I get 4.5 to 1? Do you think, Pete, on Known Agenda coming for Saturday in May?
I think so. He's available at nice prices internationally now. I think he'll come down, but he's about 12 to 1 there.
Sure.
And you've got Essential Quality's got to take money. Rock Your World taking a ton of money internationally. Hot Rod Charlie to me feels like he's got to take some money. I think you'll get 8-10 to 1 on Known Agenda.
Well,
so
okay, you know what? Then I'm going to get locked in. I just, again, I mean, I think there's a little bit more. Again, this being this far out, a few days out, there looks like there is going to be some interesting pace in this race. Now, the one thing I will say, and I will let you go, Pete, is that, doing a little bit of history here, and I'm hoping I'm able to do this on our broadcast on NBC, a hit on this is that, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head because I don't have my notes in front of me. Like, the Derby is 1.25 miles. But if you look at the last 7 runnings of the Kentucky Derby, when the lead horse, stay with me, Pete, the last 7 runnings of the Kentucky Derby, when the lead horse gets to the mile marker, so 1/4 mile from home, the last 7 winners have been either first, second, or third when the leader hits the mile marker. And 4 of those, the horses had the lead at the mile marker. So the trend says find the horse or horses that can be at the mile marker and be in the top 3 the last 7 years. The last horse that was outside the top 3 was Orb for Shug McGahee back, 8 years ago. So I thought that was really interesting looking back and going, there's been some pace in these races and, nobody's come back. I mean, really, like when you really look at it, no Mind That Bird flying up at 1,000 to 1 and being able to win the Derby. So when you start looking at it and going, wow, if you take just that trend that has happened with the Derby over the course of the last 7 times run, Pete, you sit there and go, wow, there's probably about 4 or 5 horses that you sit there and go, wow, I could see these horses being in that top 3 once they hit the mile marker. And does the track carry you the rest of the way home? Now, if they go really wicked quick, all of a sudden you might have a horse that comes from 7th or 8th. And if they do go fast, I think a horse like Known Agenda could be that horse to be able to pick them all up. So I thought that was pretty interesting looking back at the last 7 runnings of the Derby and going, you better be sitting really close because if not, you've had no chance to win. Now, Country House, the big number he was he was circling there, when we had Maximum Security end up being disqualified, but, he was circling up on the outside there. And then eventually, the track carried him home and it eventually got moved up to first. So I thought a little interesting nugget for everybody else.
It's great. And it's something we'll think about as we get closer and start really delving into what this pace is going to be, which we'll do on shows on this network next week. And it's no coincidence, Eddie, in my view, that those last 7 runnings, you're basically talking about the advent of the point system when the stretch out sprinters, the horses that got graded earnings, but not going a mile or farther, they were in the race. They were setting wicked paces and, presumably setting it up for horses to come from further back. But in this modern era of the Derby, tactical speed, more important than ever, and something could be taken a look at. Thank you so much, Eddie Olczyk, for your time today. We will see you on TV.
All right, Pete. Good luck. Thanks for having me.
Well, this is the one that I've been waiting for. I guess this is going to be the end of a friendship. And our friend Jake Ballas obviously is involved intimately with Pass the Champagne. And you have a great relationship with Jake. And when we asked you which filly you wanted to talk about in the Oaks, you picked Malathot. Shawnee, what's going on?
Did I? Is that accurate? I thought I was assigned Malathot.
Were you?
Are you throwing me under the bus here? No,
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure.
Cloudy. I don't know. don't know.
I called you the day after. I said, Sean, are you trying to make the big fella mad? What are you doing picking Malthot?
Yeah, I got to be honest. I love Pass the Champagne. I think she's really nice. My initial thought when they hit the wire in the Ashland was, damn, there's the Oaks winner right there. And it was Malthot. That doesn't mean Pass the Champagne can't win. I think she can. I think, they're both improving horses. They're both really good. But I think Malthot should be and probably will be a deserving favorite.
Yeah, and the thing is, obviously I'm rooting like heck for Pass the Champagne, but
Absolutely.
I do feel like if I'm looking at it objectively, Malthot has a legitimate opportunity to improve off that effort.
Absolutely.
She didn't run for a very long time. I think she was off maybe like 130 days, 115 days, whatever it was leading into that race. They had to change the schedule because of the passing of Sheikh Hamdan, not running down at Gulfstream, and they had to ship up, and they ran and all of these things. And she still ran well that day. The pace wasn't particularly fast. She was closing into, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about her late pace numbers, but she's got an opportunity to step forward. And from everything I've heard, Todd's really high on her. And I think he thinks that she's got a chance to be pretty special. Obviously her breeding suggests that to be the case. What is it about her from on paper standpoint that you like?
I like everything I see about her. She's shown the ability to sit close to the pace on the outside and run well. She's shown the ability to be inside speed and run well. She's shown the ability to be down in the pocket on a day at Aqueduct where I didn't really think you wanted to be in the pocket, ran well. And then last time she showed the ability to sit on the far outside in a slow pace and run down a really talented horse that got the jump on her and finish really fast. She just looks like the total package to me for what you want in an Oaks horse. Royally bred, very talented. She checks all the boxes, in my opinion.
What was the LP for both horses in that last race? Kentucky Oaks were the LPs?
Malthot ran a 103 and Pass the Champagne. Give me 1 second.
Well, you're looking at, let's say it again.
99.
And I think it's really good. Yeah, I mean, I don't know which video the viewer or listener is listening to first, but Sean talked about No Agenda for the Derby, and his LP was 100. So if we're comparing those, it definitely feels like these horses shouldn't have a problem going the mile and an eighth off of that mile and a 16th effort.
No, I don't think any problem at all, especially for Malthot.
And one thing I will say about the Ashland, it's something I've always tried to keep in mind, is that it is run on that short stretch mile and a 16th. So it's a different configuration. So, and it's hard to know whether or not Malthot or Pass the Champagne appreciate running the turns or running the stretch better. You don't know. You really don't know which one they like, but it's at least something to keep in mind that there's a possibility that Pass the Champagne ran so well because she liked the configuration of the short stretch. Or you can go the other way too, that maybe she didn't run as well because she didn't like it. Maybe she's going to be better with a longer stretch, but I think it's something to at least consider that what you saw in the Ashland could be different than what you see in the Oaks.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Well, I told you before that I'll see you soon to eat lunch, but I worry that if Jake's there, you're not going to be invited after you got on here and talked about Malthot.
Yeah, I said some nice things about Pass the Champagne. I would like nothing more than to see her win that race.
I know.
But you guys told me to talk about Malthot and said, Sean, talk her up. So I did.
Yeah, you're blaming it on us, of course. Of course. Sean, do you see yourself getting involved in like a Derby Oaks double? Is that a play as a professional player? Is that a play that you like to get involved with? I feel like it's a fan heavy wager that I feel like you could probably find some meat on the bone.
Yeah, I am. I do plan on betting it this year because I have strong opinions. And one of my strong opinions is I'm sort of anti-essential quality. And in that particular pool, I would bet against him. In other pools like the Pick Six, I'll certainly use him. But, for a double, I probably will just play a Malthot into Known Agenda and Bourbonic double. Just go all T-Pletch all the time.
Man, I can't let you get away without giving at least a couple sentences about. I've actually heard it's Bourbonic, but
Bourbonic. Okay.
yeah, I don't know. I was saying Bourbonic all day today, and then I got corrected. It's Bourbonic. What is it about that horse you like? A little Kentucky Derby bonus coverage on this Oaks Monster Pod.
He's just got sort of the profile of some of these horses that run big at big prices in the Derby to me. Same stuff we talked about with these other two. Is he's got a legitimate late pace figure. He's improving. He's, bred to run long. He smells more like a third or fourth kind of horse. But this Derby isn't full of horses that have proven to be legitimate Derby horses, in my opinion. And those are the kind where you can get some weird stuff happening. Essential Quality really hasn't improved much from 2 to 3, and he sort of just is what he is. And Known Agenda gets a bad trip. Anybody can win this race. So, I like to bet on the ones that have proven that they can finish races, and Bourbonic has done so.
Shawnee, I appreciate it.
Price.
Huh?
He'll be a huge price. I think.
Oh, hell yeah. He'll be big. You think he'll be over 50 to 1?
I think in some of the gimmick pools he will be. I think on the tote he probably won't be, just because they sort of squeeze that market to the middle a little bit and overbet some of those longer price horses. But I think in picks, yeah.
I'll probably drink enough bourbon, and I like Kendrick enough that I'll wager on him and make him at least 49 to 1.
Okay. Well, there you go. Good for you.
Sean, I appreciate you.
Love you, man.
Love you too. All right, dog. That's it.
All right.
I'm about to eat something before I got to record one of these. I'll talk to you a little bit later today.
All right, man. See you.
Bye, buddy.
The wonder dog behind me there. I hope that's okay.
No,
that's okay.
We like that. We really enjoy animal interruptions on the show, so much so that we're going to leave this part of it in. Folks have probably figured out from the very familiar voice that they just heard that our next guest is a voice and a face you've seen a lot if you follow Thoroughbred Racing. He is going to be all over the NBC SN and NBC coverage of this year's Kentucky Derby on both the Friday and the Saturday. Super sharp handicapper in his own right, member of the Beyer Speed Figure team, man who really needs no introduction. Randy Moss, how are you, my friend?
Thank you, Pete. A voice and a face people have probably seen too much over the years.
So around here, we have my dog, Muggs. We sometimes call her Muggsy, the handicapping Labrador. Is your canine shown any interest in doping out the PPs?
My canine shows primary interest in two things: food and then standing guard at the window to watch for other. Is that a dog? Lucy, is that a dog? There you
go. living up to billing. We love it.
Okay. Good girl.
We can't ask her to get upset and then complain about it. So that's great stuff. You're here today to talk about Hot Rod Charlie, a horse I know is on a lot of people's short lists for this year's Kentucky Derby. Curious to get an overview from you of Hot Rod Charlie's attributes and to get a sense of where he fits in this race.
His attributes are amazingly very similar to the attributes of the early Derby favorite, Essential Quality. I mean, you hear a lot of people talking about Essential Quality's versatility and how that makes him so tough in the Derby. Hot Rod Charlie's exactly the same thing. In fact, they were a length apart from each other early in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile because the pace was so fast. They were 7 and 8 lengths off the pace. And both of them, of course, were up on the pace in their most recent prep races, Essential Quality in the Bluegrass and Hot Rod Charlie in the Louisiana Derby. So they both can be placed anywhere the rider wants them to be. They both come into the race off very solid victories with speed figures that put them up near the top or at the top of their class. There's really very little not to like. I mean, you can always pick at little things, and we can get into some of the handicapping minutia there. But I think Hot Rod Charlie comes into the Derby in good form and with a heck of a chance to win.
I think one thing that's holding some analysts back vis-a-vis Hot Rod Charlie, granted it was 3 starts ago and the horse ran huge, but seeing that he was 94 to 1 that day in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, do you think that's something that matters in the least at this point?
No, it matters absolutely zero. As a matter of fact, now in hindsight, if you go back and watch that race, and if you just block out the 94-1 in your mind, and you think of Hot Rod Charlie as one of the Kentucky Derby favorites. You go back and watch the juvenile. You see the move that this horse makes on the second turn of the juvenile. It's like, wow. I mean, at the time watching that race on our NBC set at Keeneland, I was like, holy crap, this horse is 94-1. Who is this? Hot Rod Charlie, oh my God, he's 94-1. He's going to win the Breeders' Cup. And he blows to the lead. He actually takes the lead in mid-stretch, and then he just can't hold off Essential Quality, but he goes down fighting. He didn't back into anything. He was 3 wide on both turns, okay? Essential Quality was 2 wide on the first turn, 4 wide on the second turn. So ground covered was almost identical. It's not like he got this beautiful, perfect trip slipping through along the rail. It was a legitimately strong performance. He backed that up with another really good performance in a hot-paced Lewis at Santa Anita. And then, of course, we saw what he did in the Louisiana Derby.
And the Lewis, some folks might say, for students of collateral form, Medina Spirit beat him there. But I think it's fair to say that Hot Rod Charlie had a little bit of trouble in that race, and the result easily could have been the other way around. Do you think that's being unfair to Medina Spirit or on target?
Well, okay, I think if you look at that, I think it's a very fair point regarding Hot Rod Charlie. In my opinion, Medina Spirit was clearly the best horse that day, because what a lot of people don't realize, even some students of handicapping, the racetrack surface that day at Santa Anita was very slow by Santa Anita standards. And if you do pace figures and you apply the fractions of the Lewis with the depth of the racetrack and the slowness of the racetrack that day, the pace is like supersonic. It's by far the fastest pace of any Derby prep that we've seen so far this year, faster than Rock Your World's pace in the Santa Anita Derby. Medina Spirit had the rail that day, and so they used him early, which was not in the plan. Baffert was not happy about that. But Medina Spirit put away horses early, put away horses middle. Then coming down the wire, he holds off the closers, including Hot Rod Charlie. So he ran an unbelievable race that day, Medina Spirit did. But Hot Rod Charlie was disadvantaged a little bit by some components of the way the race was run, and it was a good effort for him as well.
Going forward, are you interested in both of these runners potentially, or do you feel like Hot Rod Charlie has scope to improve beyond what we've seen from Medina Spirit, the horse Baffert has described as a bit of an overachiever to this point?
Oh, Medina Spirit's a huge overachiever, but I don't think he took a step forward necessarily from the Lewis to the Santa Anita Derby. On the contrary, I thought Hot Rod Charlie might have run a little bit better in the Louisiana Derby than he did in the Lewis. Now, but there's one thing I talked about, the handicapping minutia that you could get in. I mean, you and I both know you can go point counterpoint on any horse, almost any horse, right? I mean, there's a yin and a yang to this thing. And if you're looking for a reason to bet a horse, you can often find it. If you're looking for a reason to beat a horse, you can often find it. Hot Rod Charlie's trip in the Louisiana Derby was much better than the trip he's likely to get in the Kentucky Derby. There was very little pace in the Louisiana Derby, which was a characteristic of most of the Louisiana prep races to begin with. Didn't have a whole lot of early speed in those races. The track was very fast that day at the fairgrounds, so a half in 47 was not particularly demanding. If you did the pace figures from the Lewis, you could expect Hot Rod Charlie to be on the lead in that race, surprisingly, since he'd never been on the lead before. And he just got a very advantageous setup in that race. Rail both turns, sets the early pace in moderate fractions. In the Kentucky Derby, he's not going to be on the lead, right? That's going to be Caddo River and Rock Your World, and Medina Spirit will be up there, and Midnight Bourbon will be up there a little off the pace. So you can expect Hot Rod Charlie to be sitting 5th, maybe 6th, within striking distance, but probably not on the rail. So he's likely to have to cover more ground in the Kentucky Derby than he did at the fairgrounds. And if you're looking for a reason to sort of knock down that Louisiana Derby performance, that would be it.
Where does Hot Rod Charlie fit amongst those at the top of the market in terms of a price you think you might be interested in, and who do you see as the biggest competition?
Well, I think you can look at the big three right now going into the Kentucky Derby, and that would be Essential Quality, Rock Your World, and Hot Rod Charlie. And I don't know what price Rock Your World's going to be. He was obviously a surprise in the Santa Anita Derby, but Hot Rod Charlie seems to be almost chronically underestimated. So he might, he'll definitely be a better price than Essential Quality, and he probably will be a better price than Rock Your World.
At what number do you think you'd be interested to key around him? Let me ask it that way.
I think maybe 7 or 8 to 1. I think would be a fair price to look for, when you're considering keying him in the various exotics and the various wagers and stuff. So, and I think that's it's entirely possible that that's about the price you're going to get.
I could see him getting disrespected for the reasons you've mentioned. I could also see the weird My Boy Jack phenomenon where the name actually ends up hurting the price on a giant stage.
It's a great point.
Kentucky Derby. It's going to be interesting. The Derby is one of these ones where sometimes I just throw up my hand and say, I don't know how they're going to bet. Let's see on the day, because we've seen so many weird things, especially in the win pool. But it's going to be fun to see. One last one for you. This is a group of horses that has not run as fast to this point in their careers as a lot of years horses coming into the Kentucky Derby. There isn't a horse that's really run the speed figure par for the Derby. Does that change the way you're approaching it from a betting point of view at all?
Probably so. I think it makes it just a little bit more wide open. I think this is overall right now, and I just said this on an NBC production meeting yesterday, and I don't think they really like to hear it. Going into the Kentucky Derby right now, these horses look below average from what we've seen in some past years, right? Because of the speed figures you just mentioned. But there's one point I want to make about the speed figures going into the Derby. When you look at Essential Quality, I think the Bluegrass speed figure should be viewed more highly than the various speed figure makers are going to give the race. And the reason why is that the pace of that race was so slow for that day at Keeneland that it almost certainly had to have an impact on the final time. I mean, Highly Motivated and Essential Quality just loped around the racetrack 1-2 until they picked up the pace midway on the second turn. And I think if the pace had been more demanding in that race, a la the Santa Anita Derby, let's say, then I think you probably would have seen triple-digit buyer speed figure, let's say, from Essential Quality, as opposed to the 97 that he got.
Great observation, and another thing that makes me think that the idea here, maybe get creative on top, but I'm going to have Essential Quality somewhere in that number. Give us a little bit of a rundown of what the NBC and NBC sports coverage is going to look like, and then I'll let you get out of here for real. How many hours will you be on, and do you know what those hours are yet?
I do, and the NBC coverage is the reason why, before you called me, I was doing a deep dive on the Old Forester Turf Classic. We've got 15 races that we're doing in addition to the Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Oaks, so 17 races in all. On Friday, we're on NBCSN exclusively, starting at noon and finishing up at 6 p.m. Eastern time, finishing up with the Kentucky Oaks. On Saturday, we start at noon and go to 2:30 on NBCSN. Then we switch over to the main NBC channel from 2:30 until 7:30, obviously culminating with the Kentucky Derby. So 6 hours on Friday, 7 hours on Saturday, and then it'll be Miller time.
Great stuff. I'll be recording it all. I'll be out there. Hopefully get a chance to see you. But I always like to watch the NBC coverage after the fact, because you guys do such a great job in terms of the race analysis and all the various interviews and packages. And it's just so glorious to get to watch horse racing with that level of production that you guys bring to the table. Much appreciated by me and many other racing fans. Randy Moss, thank you very much. Hope to see you soon.
Always a pleasure, Pete. Take care.
Next up in the show, very happy to welcome a man who's been doing all kinds of great work over at InTheMoneyPodcast.com, covering various circuits. Been doing a great job at Keeneland. Going to be helping us out at least at the beginning of Churchill Downs. He wears a lot of hats, like many of us involved in the racing game. I believe there was some soccer coaching going on tonight. For Eric Solomon, welcome to the In the Money airwaves.
Thanks, Peter. Well, I'm glad to be here.
Let's talk about King Fury. This is a horse who we made a lot of people happy on the podcast talking about ahead of the big score in the Lexington. Do you see this guy as somebody who followed Keeneland very closely as a one-hit wonder, or a horse who maybe has scope for improvement and could make an impact on this year's Kentucky Derby?
When you're looking at, he's definitely going to be a long shot if he's in the field. And when you're looking at those bigger price horses, you try and, can you make a realistic case for him? And I don't love him, but I think you can at least bring up some pretty good positives for him. I mean, in terms of pedigree, it's definitely one of the top pedigrees in the field. Curlin by Taris, who won the Raven Run at Keeneland with a big number, also Grade 1 winner, Derby City Distaff, I think the year after that. And the Lexington, it was a big effort. Now, again, you're gonna, case for, case against. It was a big effort. Yes, it was in the slop. There was a pace meltdown, but it was a figure that kind of came out of nowhere from a horse that had 5 starts at 2 and won the street sense, but when was against graded stakes foes, wasn't really showing a whole lot last year.
If I hold your feet to the fire, though, what do you think is going to happen with this runner? Is this one you're keeping on the radar for exotic wagering at least, or is this one, if he makes his way into the field, you can safely ignore?
I would put him. I plan on using him probably in the bottom of my exotics. I'm not sure I would put him on the multi-race tickets. Depends on how deep you feel you really want to go. But in terms of the race profile, he took the blinkers off for the Lexington, broke pretty sharp, but then kind of settled off that hot early pace, and he moved through the field pretty nicely. I mean, pretty much, from half a mile home, he looked like a clear winner of that race. And I'm thinking that the Derby pace is going to be pretty hot this year. And I'm not in love with some of those horses that are on the front end. So this could be one of those years, and we haven't seen it in a while, but it could be one of those years where the pace kind of melts down and things can get a little crazy at the end.
It does certainly seem notable with King Fury that race in the Lexington was the first start as a 3-year-old, and he showed such improvement in figure terms. I mean, even just a repeat of that race back, if you say, hey, maybe it wasn't just the fast-paced, good setup, maybe that was a new level of ability, I could certainly see the case for him with that pedigree sneaking in to the lower rungs of the exotics. It doesn't sound that crazy to me for a runner who I'm expecting will be every bit of 40 to 1.
Yeah, I think that would be about the right price, anywhere in that 40 to 51 kind of neighborhood. But, and again, there are some other horses that are definitely tosses to me, and he's one I could at least build a case for.
What about the top of the ticket? If you did decide to play a bet like the Superfecta, the Super High Five, with King Fury involved in the bottom, do you have an established short list on the top of your ticket this far out?
Well, right now, I think the favorite Essential Quality is going to be pretty tough. I doesn't look like there's a ton that's separating him from some of the others, but you talk about a Grade 1 winner that has kind of checked all the boxes, has won under multiple different scenarios. You kind of appreciate that kind of style of a horse in the race like the Derby, where there's 20 horses and anything can kind of happen. So I really like the race from Hot Rod Charlie in the Louisiana Derby. And again, not so much that race itself, but it just showed another dimension and again, I look for that in a Derby horse. He's run good races from off the pace. Joel Rosario kind of switched up tactics and just kind of, made a statement in that race and just went to the front. So again, like the versatility there. So those are the two where I'm at right now. I keep waffling back and forth with the California horse, Rock Your World. Excuse me. Really, I mean, couldn't ask for more for a dirt debut in the Santa Anita Derby. But again, I worry only 3 starts, a little too much too soon for a horse like that. Is he that good?
A lot of questions are going to be answered on the first Saturday in May, Eric. We're very happy to have you here with us talking King Fury, and happy to check out all the content you've got coming over at InTheMoneyPodcast.com. And look forward to chatting with you again very soon. Thanks for your time, buddy.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Next up on the show, very happy to have In the Money media regular. She is the host of Talk Racing to Me. Go check out the awesome podcast she did very recently with Lafitte Pinkai Jr., going through all of the runners in this Derby field. Must listen stuff. Welcome back to our airwaves, Naomi Tucker. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Pete. Glad to be back. It's like a regular occurrence now.
Yes, that's right. You were part of our Derby draft episode as well. Have you had time to reflect on that? Are you happy with your Derby draft team? If you had it to do over again, would you have traded the number 1 pick to JK to get the extra selection you ended up with?
I think I would have, to be honest, yes, because I'm going to try. I've actually just put in my picks for the Kentucky Derby. I'm going to try and beat Essential Quality. So I would have, but I would have liked to have had Rock Your World, Hot Rod Charlie in my team. that I would have enjoyed, but there we are.
We'll come back at the end. I do want to get your thoughts on the race, but you're here today to talk about Like the King. And there's an interesting angle here. Trainer, very well known for his success around the world, Wesley Ward, but not a name necessarily associated with the first Saturday in May. What do you think of Like the King and this angle of having a Wesley Ward Kentucky Derby starter?
Well, let's start with that. Wesley Ward has had success across the globe. We know him very well from his groundbreaking success at Royal Ascot with his 2-year-olds. 11 winners at the Royal Meeting thus far, adding to his tally with Campanelli in 2020. So last year when she won the Group 2 Queen Mary for the 2-year-olds over 5 furlongs. It's his first Kentucky Derby starter. He's never had a horse in it before, and I had to double check this, but I did. He's never had a runner in the Kentucky Derby before, so that's very significant. I think about 2 years ago, or if that's something like that, he started to voice his thoughts about wanting to target the Kentucky Derby because he's never had a runner in it before, and I think he said something like, "I'm getting old. I need to have a runner in the Kentucky Derby." So he's a very, very strong trainer. But it is significant that he's never had a runner before. And there are, prepping a horse to peak for the Kentucky Derby and going through the prep races and going through the motions. That is tricky. I mean, I do believe we talked about Steve Asmussen holding the record for the trainer with the most starts without any winners. I think it's 21 starts at the top of my head that he's had without a winner. I mean, it's tough. It's a very tough race to win, and you want to be ticking all the boxes and doing everything right. The horse he's sending here, Like the King, is the winner of the Jeff Ruby Stakes. So I had a look. Jeff Ruby Stakes as a prep isn't the strongest prep. 2 winners in Kentucky Derby history have come out of the Jeff Ruby Stakes in comparison to the top 6 preps, ranging from about 19 to 24 winners to their name. So that just puts it in perspective. Swell in 1984 and Spectacular Bid in 1979. Of course, Spectacular Bid tried to win the Triple Crown, but failed in the Belmont. Those 2 horses came out of the Jeff Ruby Stakes. So as of late, it hasn't been as productive a prep for horses coming into the Kentucky Derby. Now, Like the King himself, he won the Jeff Ruby, like I just said, in his last start. That was a career best 86 buyer he got for that. Now, that was an 86 buyer on an all-weather track, at Turf Ray Park. That was his best. His best will not be good enough, I think, to win the Kentucky Derby. I wondered if he wasn't much of a speed horse in the last race. He's ranged up and taken the lead in some of his other starts, but he looked slow out of the gate in the Jeff Ruby. Either that was a choice, it didn't help. He was drawn on the rail. I guess they might have made the decision to take him back, seeing that there was speed in the race. He wasn't aggressively put in by Drayden Van Dyke, that's for sure. He sort of sat on the rail towards the back end of the race, but lucky for him. So I think it might have been a tactical decision. They went a decent pace, 46-4 for the half over mile and 8th. So clearly they might have thought, okay, there is a fair bit of speed in this race. He can rate, we'll take him back. The 40 place horses started to tire, which is when the closest started kicking into gear, which included Like the King. He was ridden and produced at the exact right time by Drayden Van Dyke. So kudos to him there. Pedigree-wise, 2 falls out of the mare. The mare was a claimer who isn't really related to anything significant. So this horse, to me, on face value, seems like a little bit of an overperformer.
There are two things that give me pause regarding Like the King. I really liked him the last day in the Jeff Ruby Stakes, thinking it would be a perfect setup, pretty much what you described. I'm imagining that might have been tactical with so much speed signed on. So he got this perfect setup there and didn't run a figure that would give him much of a chance. But then the other thing that is worrisome is when you look back to the lone dirt start, most of this one's form coming on the synthetic. But if you look at that lone dirt start at Keeneland, not pretty much the worst race on offer. So it does make me wonder when you talk about the Ward narrative if maybe this one is here for the occasion more than for his chance to win. But hey, the way the Derby point system works, this horse has earned his way in. Oh, one other note I had when you were talking about the history of this race as a prep. This is the race that used to be known back in the day for old timers such as myself as the Jim Beam Stakes for many, many years before Jeff Ruby took over the sponsorship a couple of years ago for folks who were wondering. And obviously, I would imagine since it's gone to the synthetic, that in of itself is one of the reasons why not as significant of a prep. If we've covered what we need to cover on Like the King, Naomi, I would love to get a quick thought from you on the Derby in general. You said you've already had to submit picks for this race. They're holding your feet to the fire early there over at your employer, Maryland Jockey Club.
I mean, I'd like to see the draw first. I think that's very significant. You and I probably do that quite similar. Want to visualize how the race might unfold. But yes, had to put in my 4 picks already. As I said, trying to beat Essential Quality, of course, at my own risk. And I know that Jake was very, very high on him. Very pleased to have gotten him with that first pick that I traded in. I end up trying to beat him using Hot Rod Charlie because I loved in the Louisiana Derby. There was just a little bit of hustling going on at the start, and he was able to use his speed, move forward, receive that little bit of pressure, receive pressure against sort of mid-race before clearing away and running a 99 buyer. Now, just if we go on speed figures, there are a few horses that have higher figures than Essential Quality. So higher figures than the projected favorite in the race. So I thought, well, Hot Rod Charlie, Doug O'Neill, I'm going to take a chance here trying to beat Essential Quality. So I used Essential Quality in second. Of course, the unbeaten 2-year-old champion that can sit on the pace, can come from off the pace. Brad Cox has just been firing. I mean, this guy has never had a runner before either. But if you've seen the body of work he's put, the amount of British Cup winners, how his stable has been heating up, how his system is working, you do think he has a solid chance in there. And then underneath, I do believe, I'm trying to top of my head, no, I think they might have changed him around a little bit. Rock Your World in third, Known Agenda in fourth. Rock Your World just absolutely blew them out of the water with that triple-digit buyer figure last time out in the Santa Anita Derby. Is he unexposed? How is he going to react to horses coming at him, horses pressuring him? We don't know. We don't know. But it's a very talented horse that I want to be on the back. I mean, clearly, I like a bit of a speed horse. So Rocky Word's shown he's got plenty of that. Known Agenda, Todd Pletcher trainee coming out of that Florida Derby win where, Greatest Honor isn't on the Kentucky Derby Trail anymore. But, not a bad horse at all. And this is a horse that can sit off the pace and really come with a devastating closing kick. So I feel like I'm trying to cover all my bases here with front runners, with horses that can come off from it. So yeah, that's my top 4. How about you, Pete? I'd like to know your top 4 now.
Oh my goodness. I'm still hemming and hawing, honestly, Naomi. I'm with you on how much I respect Rock Your World and Known Agenda. But at the end of the day, this is a Derby where I'm going to want to make sure I'm fishing and getting something at an appropriate price. So I'm gonna defer and wait until we get a little bit closer. We see these final works, we get to see the draw, and critically, we get to see a little bit more of the betting. Because as much as I do like Rock Your World, I'm concerned at how much his price is steaming in internationally. 4-1 the last I saw. That's
a bit
short enough. That's probably short enough. But we don't know. On the day, it could be twice that. So I'm holding out hope. And thrilled to have you here on the Monster Pod. Check out more from Naomi on the Maryland simulcast feeds. And, of course, right here on In the Money Podcast Network with her brilliant Talk Racing to Me. Naomi, thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome, Pete.
Well, when we were doing this podcast idea, we were going through all the lists of horses, thinking who we were going to have talk about which horse. And I remembered a text that my next guest, Gene Menez, from the senior writer at Sportsline, a friend of the podcast, a beautiful shirt, by the way, Gene. I remember a text that you texted me the other day asking what I thought of Obazos. And then you proceeded to tell me all the reasons you liked them. So I thought there's no reason not to have you on to talk about this horse. What is it about this horse that you like so much?
Well, there are a lot of things. You know, he's improving at the right time. He's gotten faster as the races have gotten longer. You know, he should enjoy the distance. There are a lot of things. The price, obviously. But if we go by race, I think you'll kind of get his story and get the reason why that I think people should consider him if they're looking to kind of spice up their exotics. So let's start. Let's start at his maiden race. He's finished 6th in a race that was on the slop, but he made up 10 lengths on the field and passed 5 horses in the final 2.5 furlongs. By the way, this is a horse who always, with the exception of the Risen Star, makes up ground over the final half of the race, and that's going to be important moving forward. His second start was a 5.5 furlong maiden special at the fairgrounds. He again broke slowly and trailed by 12 lengths at one point, but he closed like a freight train and won by 5.5 at 5.5 furlongs in a hand ride. 4 weeks later, he ran in a 6 furlong allowance race, and I love this race. He broke slowly, not as slowly as before. He found himself behind a wall of horses, and then he saw a seam and bullied his way through 2 horses, and he ended up winning by 4.5 lengths. And I think this race showed that he has the ability to race behind and between horses, something that will come in handy in the Derby. So I really love that allowance win. Now he's won at 5.5 and 6 furlongs. And, you know, I hear people comparing him to like Golden Soul and Commanding Curve, some of these one-run, late-running plotters who kind of crash the trifecta, but I don't think he's that type. I mean, you're going to get the price of those, but he has a little bit more speed than those, as exemplified by his wins at 5.5 and 6 furlongs. I went back actually to 2006 and tried to come up with. We got hammering going over here, JK. I wasn't expecting that.
That's all good.
That's like the cell phone ringing in the Players Podcast bingo. So maybe I should get a bingo square. So anyway, he's won at 5.5 and 6 furlongs. There have been 7 horses since 2006 that have been big prices to kind of hit the trifecta, including like Mr. Big News last year, Icebox, Looking at Lee, Golden Soul, Commanding Curve, even Mind That Bird. I included him in there. Of those 7 horses, only 2 of those won at 6 furlongs or shorter. None of it actually won at 5.5. So he's got more speed than those. So after that impressive allowance win, the connections moved him up to the Risen Star, and he predictably, it was a 1.125 race, stretched him out from 6 furlongs. He predictably finished 4th and faded in that race. I'm going to give him a pass for that since that was his first time around 2 turns and first time going beyond 6 furlongs. Now, he returned in Louisiana Derby a much better horse, and he put in his best effort to date. He trailed early in that race, kind of advanced along the backstretch and around the far turn, and then he closed into that slow pace set by Hot Rod Charlie and Midnight Bourbon, who finished 1-2. They were 1-2 all the way around. He just missed getting up for second that day. And then he ended up galloping out past Hot Rod Charlie in that race. He earned a career high Beyer speed figure of 96 in the Louisiana Derby. And Thorograph actually has him faster than Hot Rod Charlie in that race. Now, if you don't believe the Beyer number, the variant, and this is important, the variant on Louisiana Derby Day was split. So the second half of the card was slower than the first half of the card. So I'd keep an eye on the Kentucky Oaks, and if Travel Column and Clairiere do well in the Oaks on Friday, that will help support the number for the Louisiana Derby for both Hot Rod Charlie and Obazos and Midnight Bourbon as well.
One of the things I'll say about him that you brought up a couple of times when you were kind of going through his performances is that he's shown a lot of grit. a lot of ability to kind of fight through spots, to get out of spots. And I think that's huge in the Kentucky Derby, especially for a horse who's going to be coming from out of it. You have, you know, if you look at those horses that you named, Mind That Bird, Looking at Lee, Commanding Curve, Golden Soul, all those horses that kind of blew up the exotics, they showed a lot of grit to get through holes, to go around horses, to split horses. You have to do that when you're coming from behind in the Derby.
Yeah, and he definitely did that. You know, as I mentioned, the allowance win, you should take a look at that race. He saw a scene and between two horses, and he bullied his way through. It wasn't like the Seattle Slew in 1977 Kentucky Derby, but you know, kind of like that. Then in the Louisiana Derby, he had to kind of idle a little bit around the far turn behind a horse, and then the tiring leader, or behind, I think it was Right and Just, then came around and then is willing to race and make up ground on the inside, you know. So, you know, obviously there's still some negatives. He has to get a little bit faster, but not by much. I mean, his speed figures are right in that group behind the top horse, you know, whether it be Rock Your World or Essential Quality in the Thoroughgraph figs. The Jockey, Marcelino Pedrosa, this will be the biggest stage that he's ever raced in. He's only won one stakes race, and you know, how will he react to the moment? Some will say that his two wins came with Lasix, but his two best performances came without it. You know, obviously coming from off the pace, he has a better chance of losing ground and encountering traffic trouble than, let's say, you know, Rock Your World or something like that. I'd prefer that he draw inside so that he could save ground.
It's funny. I don't ever say that. I never say I want a horse to draw inside, but I do think it actually works for him because he's shown the courage to get out of those spots. And I think that, you know, and he ran well enough going 1 mile and 3/16, but he did have the most, you know, he had these one going shorter. So if the distance is an issue, not saying it is, but if it is, I think the ability to save ground is going to help him quite a bit when he's trying to make that late run. So there's a lot to like about this horse. I think underneath, I don't think he's the type of horse you want to cut in line to bet to win. What price do you think, Gene, or what price is acceptable do you think that you're going to get on Obazos?
Well, you know, he's starting to get some buzz. I know Steve Bick has been talking him up. Ed DeRosa likes him a little bit as well. I still think you're going to get 25 to 30 to 1 in the, you know, to win. I think in the verticals, he's going to be a lot shorter than that, right? I mean, I think a lot of people are going to be keying him and underneath in trifectas and supers and maybe even exactas. So I'm still hopeful. I still think you get 25 to 30 to 1, but I'm losing hope by the day.
Well, Gene, I hope for your sake that he stays up there a little bit higher. And if you're watching the race and you see Obazos hit the board, assume that our friend Gene Menez hit the trifecta. Gene, I appreciate you taking the time, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, JK.
Next up on the Derby Monster Pod, returning guest to the show. We had him doing double duty with a quick cameo on the Oaks broadcast. You've seen him recently over on our In the Money Plus coverage, where he's given out 2 straight pick 5s in a row. We'll see if he wants to put that streak on the line anytime soon. Hopefully he will for us, because he's one of the sharpest guys around as far as I'm concerned. That's my man, Blake Jesse. Blake, how are you today?
Well, I'm doing well, Pete. Happy to, do this Derby pod, and it's, exciting always to be this time of year. So let's get into it.
Let's do it, my friend. And I apologize in advance. My little shorthand that appears on the graphic here, Blake Jesse on Helium, sounds like you've been, hanging out at like an 8-year-old's birthday party or something. Your voice sounds very normal to me. No helium about it. Now, this is an interesting horse to talk about, because I know my knee-jerk reaction after the race and then hearing that the plan was going to be to train Helium up to the Kentucky Derby, I didn't give him much count. But subsequently, I've heard some sharp people, including yourself, say that this is a horse to keep on the radar. Is this talk about Helium being a potential wise guy horse a bunch of hot air, or is there something to it?
Well, I don't know if he'll get to the wise guy status. Just checking around some offshore places. I mean, we're looking like possibly 40, 50 to 1 in that area. But, let's start with some positives for Helium. I actually feel like being a first-year sire of Ironicus, that's actually a positive. It's more of adds to the appeal of the surprise package, so to speak. He's got that going for him. Now, you speak of the 8 weeks, between, last start and today, and going into the Derby and his last start. So, I'm not too concerned about that. I like that Cassie, waited 3 weeks after the Tampa Bay Derby to get him back on the work tab. So he gave him a really good opportunity to, get over that Tampa Bay Derby. And, he's put a few works in him down at Palm Meadows, and then he shipped him up to Churchill where he's had his last 2 works. And he's going to have another one, in a few days, for his final one. So, I like the prep, that he's, the way that Cassie's been prepping him and getting him ready for the Derby. As far as, coming in from 8 weeks, he's not really overworking him. So I like that aspect. And you also have to take into account that, the horse was coming into the Tampa Bay Derby, off of a 4-month layoff. So the horse runs well fresh. It's hard to knock a horse that's undefeated 3 for 3. So now let's do that part. Let's try to knock it. The negatives for me are, we're going to be making its 4th start and a 20-horse field. That's something that, I believe only Justify's done. Other negatives, we got a rider, Julian Leparoux, that's making his, 13th Derby ride. Best finish is 4th, so not a lot of, success to go off there. Mark Cassie, same thing, best finish 4th. So not a lot of success to go off there either. Now, it's for me, it's hard to recommend, him as a win candidate, although he is undefeated. But it's a horse that I'm definitely, not just going to dismiss and, consider a throwout. Simply because, he's not really done anything wrong to date. He's answered the bell every time, although this one's going to be extremely tough. You really don't want to, throw a horse out like this. So especially, not knowing the post draw yet, that's going to play a lot into a horse like this. But, if you go back to the Tampa Bay Derby, we're 4 wide, 3 wide, 4 wide going into the first turn. And we're advancing 5 wide, on the far turn. And, we're holding off the, race favorite, to draw off and win. So nothing was really handed to him in that spot. So, I mean, he was bumped around and he handled it. So he's going to get a lot of that in the Derby. So, it's a horse at a big price that I'm definitely going to be using underneath and very sparingly up top, but I'm definitely going to be using a horse like this underneath because he seems to, find a way to run his race.
I take your point. I mean, just looking back at that Tampa Bay Derby, not a bad setup, but the horse finished the race the right way. That was the first time going long, the first time on dirt. All the working in between feels like one that could be progressive. I take that point about, again, held up type ride, which we know Leparoux likes doing, so that's good. And maybe can get up into a spot like 3rd or 4th. Where do you want to see him drawn? And at what price would you make him a horse you might build some bets around?
Well, he's going to need to be 40 to 1 plus for me to even consider building bets around. And ideally, draw, I mean, you would want him to get somewhere between 4 through 8. That would be, somewhere where he's going to avoid the, jostling, get right to the rail and save ground and, hope for some C's to part and, ride for luck.
Riding for luck is a tricky way to go, but maybe in a fast-paced Derby at a very big price, it can happen for Helium. Blake, thank you so much for coming on and giving you your thoughts on this intriguing long shot. Do you have the race narrowed down in the top end? Do you have a quick pick you want to give us as well?
Right now, all of my money's getting, put on Hot Rod Charlie. So, barring any terrible draws, but yeah, that's where my money's getting directed.
Team Hot Rod Charlie. We heard about him elsewhere in the show from Randy Moss. All right, Blake. Very appreciative of your time today, doing double duty on these shows, and hopefully we'll see you soon elsewhere on the In the Money Network or over on In the Money Plus as well.
Thanks, Pete, and best of luck out there.
That's going to do it for this edition of the show. I want to thank all the guests who took time out of what's a crazy time for horse racing people to appear and talk about their contenders. Thank you also so much to my co-host in this venture and business partner, Jonathon Kinchen. Did a great job, and thank him for all of his efforts on the network. Who else? You've probably been hearing the quality of my voice deteriorate throughout these broadcasts, so I'm going to thank Hot Water, Salt, Honey, Chamomile Tea, all for helping get me through this. How about some of our partners as well? Our racetrack partners, Lone Star, starting up soon. We're going to be doing a lot of fun stuff with them. Woodbine, waiting for the go-ahead from the Ontario government. Can't wait to get rocking and rolling with them. Monmouth Park, they're back with us. Very pumped to be spending time with them as well. How about our founding partners? Let's give them a shout out. The Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, trfinc.org/players to get a bottle of the new In the Money whiskey to join us for the events that we have cooking Derby week as well. 10 Strike Racing, we really appreciate them. Hey, I forgot an important racetrack. A few more racing days left. Keeneland, always great to be working with them. LTN Global, great to have them in the fold. DigitalRealEstateCoaching.com. Check out this for a possible side hustle if you're a horse racing person. A lot of great stuff going on over there too. That's going to do it. This show has been a production of In the Money Media. Our business manager is Drew Courtney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathon Kinchen. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. May you win all your Kentucky Oaks and Derby photos.